When your first love marries someone else for power, what would you do? She chooses to gather 5 even more handsome men for her harem. A stunningly gorgeous duke's son, a cunningly adorable son of the prime minister, an elegant yet cunning merchant kingdom successor, and a cold but surprisingly warm mercenary king. Even her ex's younger brother. She welcomes them all with open arms. Inside the Vestria imperial palace, Laetitia acknowledges the minister's proposal that a reliable heir ensures royal stability. She announces her intention to gather a harem. The ministers can't believe their ears. Did they hear wrong? How could the empress want to gather a harem? Laetitia suggests starting with about 5 candidates. Duke Augustus urgently advises that since ancient times, empresses have only had one imperial consort. Laetitia questions this, reminding them they once said a large harem helps balance power among factions. Augustus explains that even when past empresses had lovers, they never openly declared a harem. Laetitia counters with examples. Seraphia had 5 consorts, Eldria had 6. Emperors of the Vestria Empire averaged 15 consorts, and some more romantic rulers exceeded 20. Why can others have them but not her? She needs at least 5 or more. She advises the ministers not to worry. The more consorts she gathers, the higher their chances of becoming imperial in-laws. Some ministers quietly grow excited. Originally, the imperial consort position belonged to Duke Augustus's son, but now they might have a chance too. Laetitia stares absently at the arguing ministers, softly murmuring Cyrano's name. Did he enjoy controlling everything like this, which is why he abandoned her? If so, she'll make Cyrano personally select her harem members. She'll return every bit of grief he caused her. Time rewinds to 6 years ago, the year 511 of the Lumina era. Cyrano came to study from Khalid. The memory of that day remains crystal clear to Laetitia. When she first saw Cyrano, Laetitia's heart lost control. The two seemed drawn together by fate. Cyrano even promised Laetitia his entire life. Laetitia believed with certainty. Cyrano was the soulmate heaven sent her, but disaster always strikes without warning. Cyrano's half-brother Hector launched a rebellion. Cyrano frantically said he had to return immediately. Laetitia wanted to go with him, but he refused. Cyrano explained that while he couldn't bear to leave her, the journey was too dangerous. He held Laetitia close. He promised that, even separated by distance, his love for her would never change. He would fight to ascend the throne for Laetitia's sake. Then he'd send the most magnificent envoy to Vestria. At that time, he would formally ask her father for her hand in marriage. He begged Laetitia to wait for his return. After that, Laetitia went to the temple every day to pray. She asked the gods to keep Cyrano safe from his brother's schemes. Perhaps her devotion moved the heavens. 2 years later, the Vestria Empire received news of Cyrano's coronation. 2 months pass. Laetitia comforts herself. A newly crowned emperor must be incredibly busy, though she misses Cyrano deeply. To become an empress requires patience. Only then can she be worthy of him. Her nanny reassures her that they've always been the perfect couple everyone envies. Laetitia makes up her mind. While Cyrano is busy, she'll read more and familiarize herself with state affairs. She needs to improve quickly so she can surprise him when they reunite. Finally, one day, envoys from Khalid arrive. Laetitia races over frantically. She signals the guards to stay quiet as she hides in the shadows to watch secretly. It's actually a marriage proposal envoy from Khalid. Laetitia hears the words emperor's marriage, and her heart races wildly. She listens as the envoy relays their hope that Vestria will send representatives to congratulate the newly married imperial couple. When she hears Duke Drake's daughter, Elena, Laetitia is thunderstruck, frozen in disbelief. Once Laetitia had asked him curiously what he held in his hand. Cyrano smiled and said it was a ring. She was puzzled. It was actually made of grass. Cyrano explained he'd learned to make it like common folk do. Laetitia teased him playfully. So your country is really poor, huh? Cyrano quickly defended it as romantic and asked her to extend her hand. After slowly slipping the ring onto her finger, she couldn't help but admire how it was prettier than she'd imagined. Cyrano smiled and asked, "Right?" Then he held her hand gently and said seriously that he loved her. Laetitia blushed and softly replied, "Me too." But now comes the news. Cyrano is marrying Duke Drake's daughter, Elena. Laetitia returns to her room, tears streaming down uncontrollably. Her nanny hears the crying and rushes over urgently. She asks frantically what's making her cry so bitterly. Laetitia calls out to her nanny through sobs, her voice hoarse and full of grievance. She cries and tells her nanny that Cyrano is marrying another woman. The nanny is shocked by the news. She firmly believes there must be a misunderstanding. Cyrano used to follow Laetitia everywhere inseparably. Maybe the envoy isn't here for a marriage proposal. She might have heard wrong. Laetitia chokes out that she even heard the bride's name clearly. The bride is Duke Drake's daughter, Elena, remembering how Cyrano once confessed his love to her so deeply, and how she sincerely responded. Now it all seems bitterly ironic. Laetitia curses Cyrano through gritted teeth, calling him trash and a traitor. She knows Cyrano's marriage is now public knowledge and set in stone. Laetitia regrets only praying praying to the gods for Cyrano's victory. If only she'd prayed that his heart would never change. Seeing Laetitia sitting on the windowsill, which is quite dangerous, the nanny cries out, urging her to come down immediately. But Laetitia calmly says the palace wasn't built with shortcuts. This isn't dangerous. She curses that Cyrano is lower than dirt. The nanny is about to persuade her again, but suddenly freezes. She remembers something important and hurriedly searches for it. Laetitia watches her nanny in confusion, asking what she's doing. The nanny hands a letter to Laetitia. She asks her to look at this unusual letter. Laetitia notices the envelope has no signature, and her confusion deepens. The nanny explains that someone from the envoy secretly entrusted her to deliver this privately. Laetitia is shocked when she hears envoy. She guesses the letter might be related to Cyrano, but the next second she quickly grows worried. If this letter is a goodbye letter, what should she do? What if the letter mentions that Cyrano's heart has changed? Though afraid, Laetitia still opens the letter with trembling hands. Seeing that Laetitia's condition isn't right, the nanny can't help but ask softly what the letter says. Seeing Laetitia doesn't respond, she softly calls out "Your Highness" again. The next day, she finds her father and states she wants to go to Kaleid. The emperor is shocked when he hears Kaleid. His eyes are full of doubt about Laetitia's purpose. He directly asks Laetitia if she's going to see Cyrano. He admits Cyrano is a good young man, but he's not suitable for Laetitia. This outcome is actually better. The emperor reminds Laetitia not to be obsessed with a lost connection. He's afraid his daughter wants to join the other's harem. Laetitia firmly states she's never had such thoughts. She simply must make a trip to Kaleid. The emperor sighs helplessly. He wonders who Laetitia inherited her stubbornness from. He reluctantly compromises, but he has two conditions. First, stomp hard on Cyrano's foot. If he asks, tell him it was his orders. Hearing this, Laetitia laughs somewhat helplessly. Second, he requires Laetitia to go as the representative of the congratulatory envoy. Soon, Laetitia arrives on horseback. At the Kaleid Empire, a minister bows respectfully, welcoming the princess's personal visit. Laetitia says mockingly that she has a connection with Cyrano, so he'll definitely be happy she came. The receiving minister immediately agrees, saying His Majesty will certainly be delighted. Laetitia sneers coldly. He'd better be. The guard captain worries endlessly, hoping she'll control her emotions and not lose composure. The minister makes a welcoming gesture, indicating to walk this way. Laetitia follows, but her heart churns uncontrollably. She'd imagined she'd come to Kaleid someday, but never like this, preparing for the wedding of someone she loved deeply, picking gifts for his bride. But all of this should have been hers. As soon as she pushes open the door, Cyrano embraces her fully. His voice is stiff with choking emotion, repeating over and over, "I missed you so much." Laetitia isn't moved. Instead, she pushes him away directly. She says coldly that she's only giving him 5 minutes. He'd better explain the reason properly. Cyrano knows she's angry and pitifully begs her not to be so cold. His heart aches so much, yet she loses her temper the moment they meet. Soon, only 3 minutes and 30 seconds remain. Cyrano finally panics. He takes a deep breath and begins to explain. He says Hector's rebel forces were far more massive than imagined. Most critically, Duke Drake, the most powerful noble, supported Hector. He had to secure Duke Drake's support, so he chose a conciliatory approach. And Duke Drake's condition was for him to marry his only daughter, Elena, as Empress. After saying all this, Cyrano apologetically tries to apologize to Laetitia. Laetitia stomps hard on his foot, telling him not to apologize to her. She says calmly that she doesn't blame him. After all, people prioritize themselves, but not blaming doesn't mean she's not angry. She demands to know why he didn't tell her after the war ended. Why did she have to hear about his marriage from the wedding envoy? Cyrano hastily explains that he's not here to break up with her. Laetitia asks back, if not to break up, then to apologize? Cyrano doesn't answer. He only urgently repeats, "I love you." Laetitia finds this bitterly ironic. He begs her to wait 5 years for him, to root out Hector's remaining forces and surpass the Duke's power. By then, he can not only defeat the remnants but also give Laetitia an answer. Laetitia cuts through his words. What will she get after 5 years? Even as a political strategy, he'll have a harem. Does he expect her to keep suffering? Cyrano hurriedly promises he'll never share a bed with them. After 5 years, he'll send them all away. Laetitia says bluntly that although she loves him, in 5 years he'll become another woman's man. So she tells Cyrano not to try to hold her back and decisively proposes they break up. He reluctantly calls her name, begging her not to leave. Laetitia doesn't understand. Does he think she'd be happy hearing all this? A guard knocks and enters, carefully asking if Laetitia is all right. Laetitia lowers her head and says quietly, "No." The guard says he'll fetch a maid to help her change clothes. Laetitia nods and says softly, "Thank you for the trouble." After just a few steps, he turns back to report that there's a visitor. Cyrano's fiancée, Miss Elena, has arrived. Elena respectfully expresses that she'd like to meet Her Highness the Princess. The guard suggests that if Laetitia doesn't want to meet her, he'll ask Elena to leave. Laetitia says to let Elena in. As an envoy, it wouldn't be proper to avoid her. After Elena enters, she immediately greets Laetitia with a bow. Elena greets Her Highness the Princess, her manner respectful, but Laetitia suddenly feels annoyed with herself. She hasn't even changed out of her mud-stained shoes and cloak. Then Then she graciously extends her hand and says she's pleased to meet Miss Elena. Leticia holds Elena's hand, finding it slender and soft, completely different from her own calloused hands. Will Cyrano really not fall in love with her after living with her for 5 years? Elena says that regarding her conversation with Cyrano, she has something to say. After hearing this, Leticia's heart sinks. Cyrano really was being monitored. Elena says that because her thoughts differ from His Majesty's, she wants to be honest. She states firmly that 5 years from now, she absolutely will not divorce His Majesty. Their plans as a couple don't need to involve her. Elena explains this isn't because of love. She just doesn't want to go along with his wishes. When she heard that conversation, she was truly anxious and unsettled. But who would want to marry a man who plans to abandon them? Leticia can't help but wonder where Elena heard all this. Regardless of how it happened, this must be terrifying for Elena. Elena says at first she felt her pride was wounded and considered calling off the wedding. But in the end, she decided not to, because that wouldn't hurt His Majesty. After hearing this, Leticia feels somewhat guilty and apologizes softly to Elena. But Elena shakes her head, saying she's the one who should be grateful. She thanks Her Highness for responding to Cyrano the way she did. After Elena finishes speaking, she rises and bows, preparing to take her leave. Her steps pause as she remembers something. She turns back and takes out a bottle of wine, saying she thinks Her Highness might need this. Elena smiles and says this wine has been her close companion for years. It helps ease one's emotions. Leticia drinks alone, feeling the wine is indeed as effective as Elena said. She drinks while consoling herself. Is Cyrano the only man in the world? The more Leticia thinks about it, the less necessary it seems to dwell on this. There are countless men out there. She urgently needs an incredibly handsome man to help her completely forget Cyrano. But she can't find such a handsome face in reality. Just then, a handsome guy appears, making her slightly more alert. Leticia shakes her head hard, wondering what he said. Looking at the blurry figure before her, Leticia feels dazed. Is this a dream? She thinks to herself that if it's a dream, she should seize it and not let the opportunity slip away. After who knows how long, Leticia wakes up with a splitting headache, wondering when she fell asleep. Seeing the man beside her, she's instantly stunned. What's going on? Why is she sleeping here? Leticia hastily checks herself. She discovers that what she feared didn't seem to happen, and she relaxes slightly. But then she thinks again. She's a princess visiting as the representative of an envoy. If people found out she got drunk and stayed in the garden with a strange man, the consequences would be unthinkable. Leticia is terrified. As she gets up, she smells the strong alcohol odor on both of them. She wonders if that man also drank heavily with her. At this moment, the man seems to be waking up. Hearing the man stir, Leticia doesn't dare think further and flees immediately. Back in her room, Leticia's mind is full of questions. Who is that man? What kind of person is he? Does he know she's a princess? How did he end up lying beside her? If he's a noble, she might run into him at Cyrano's wedding. She desperately tries to recall what clothes the man wore, but discovers she has no memory at all. Leticia can only console herself. She'll just pretend nothing happened. After all, she's not the only one who got drunk. He probably acted crazy too. Better to save face for both of them and mutually pretend nothing happened. How could she actually run into him? The odds are too low. But when she sees that man at the banquet, her composure completely crumbles. How could the man who got dead drunk and lay in the garden with her be sitting in the highest seat at the banquet? She starts thinking again. What are the chances he's Kaleid royalty? Leticia feels she must be mistaken. Just then, the guard beside her asks if she knows that person. That person has been staring at her constantly since earlier. His gaze hasn't left her. Leticia's heart sinks. It seems she wasn't mistaken after all. The scene from that night, Kael still finds unbelievable. He looks at the drunk Leticia, wondering to himself where this night came from. Kael approaches and calls out to her, reminding her not to lose control. This isn't a place to mess around. But Leticia in his grasp doesn't budge at all. Kael can't help but wonder what monstrous strength she has. He debates whether to let her go sleep, unable to help guessing if she was dumped by someone. At this moment, Leticia suddenly lifts her head and says vaguely, "It's you." But Leticia mistakes him for Cyrano, choking up as she says how much she likes him. Actually, Kael isn't unpopular. Though not a legitimate prince, he's still a prince. Not to mention he has an enviably handsome face. But since he turned 15, no woman has dared confess to him because of his personality. His wild and explosive temper always scares people away. That night, when Leticia clung to him and wouldn't let him go, it was his first time experiencing this. Kael actually feels secretly pleased. A woman is actually sad because she likes him, but with his status as a prince, he can't just marry any woman. But Leticia asks with a tearful voice if he'll leave her too. Seeing her vulnerable state, Kael's heart softens. He sighs inwardly. How pitiful. She actually likes me. He snatches the wine bottle from Leticia's hand, reminding her this wine is strong and she shouldn't drink too much. But she insists on locking him in prison and tying him up so he can't run away. Kael hurriedly reminds her that's a crime. But what frustrates him is that the next day, Leticia not only left him him in the garden and ran away. But now she won't even meet his eyes. Kyle doesn't want Letitia to avoid his gaze. He actively approaches her and says they should greet each other. Just as he's about to mention yesterday's incident, Simon beside her interrupts. Simon asks warily for his honorable name. Kyle introduces himself confidently. Kyle Astria, Prince of the Khalid Empire. Letitia is extremely embarrassed. He's not only royalty but also Cyrano's brother. She forces herself to remain calm and states her identity. Letitia Valentina, Princess of the Vestria Empire and representative of the envoy. Inwardly, she stubbornly insists she has no memory of him. She really doesn't remember what happened yesterday. Then she changes the subject, praising Khalid as a beautiful country. But Kyle deliberately continues, saying even sleeping outside here won't freeze you to death. It's very warm. Letitia quickly agrees, saying sleeping outside isn't proper and might cause a cold. But Kyle speaks with hidden meaning, saying she looks perfectly safe and sound. Letitia says stiffly that's natural. Then she asks what the Khalid Empire's most famous food is. Kyle answers with just one word, wine, his eyes teasing. Letitia's heart tightens. She's certain he remembers everything from that night. Simon notices something off about her tone. Just as he's about to ask, she pinches him hard. Letitia appears calm on the surface, politely saying she'd like to try some too. Then she reminds Kyle that his brother Cyrano is about to enter. Kyle says they'll greet each other later and tells her to definitely wait for him. After he leaves, Simon leans over and asks if she's interested in that prince. Her tone just now was frightening. Letitia snaps at him irritably, saying if he noticed, he should shut up and stay quiet. Simon feels relieved. This is the Her Highness he knows. Letitia can't help but mutter about how he normally views her. He says seriously that if she has someone she's interested in, she needn't hide it. Her carefree personality is actually her most charming trait. Letitia is displeased and demands if he's mocking her. Before becoming knight captain, Simon was Leonard's friend. His swordsmanship is exceptional. He became captain at a young age, but in her eyes he's always been a mischievous older friend. Letitia thinks of Kyle again, wondering what noble ladies find handsome about him. Simon asks again if she's really interested in that prince. Letitia firmly denies it once more. Simon breathes a sigh of relief, saying the two aren't compatible at all. Letitia asks in confusion why not. He explains it's a man's intuition. Kyle's personality is obviously bad. Such a personality doesn't suit Letitia. Letitia asks him in return what kind of personality would suit her. Seeing Cyrano, Letitia's heart tightens. He's not going to say him, is he? Simon hastily says no. Letitia presses him. Then who? Simon finally speaks up, asking what she thinks of him. Simon tentatively asks Letitia what she thinks of him, but Letitia says coldly that this joke really puts her in a bad mood. Then she turns her head and accidentally meets Cyrano's gaze. She quickly looks away and snorts coldly in displeasure. At this moment, the wedding music suddenly begins. The bride Elena appears in her wedding dress. All eyes focus on her. Letitia forces a smile and applauds, but her smile hides bitterness. Cyrano's voice rings out as he solemnly recites his vow to take Elena as his wife. The priest hands over the ring. Cyrano gently places it on Elena's finger. The newlyweds lean in for a kiss. This scene makes Letitia feel absolutely terrible inside. Simon softly reminds her that if she can't hold it together and loses composure, she'll only embarrass herself completely. Letitia responds hoarsely that she knows. Simon worriedly reminds her about her expression. She says helplessly that forcing herself to smile in this situation is really too much. She gave a congratulatory gift, came to the wedding, and even applauded earnestly. She can't help but ask, hasn't she as an ex-girlfriend gone above and beyond? Letitia sits down angrily, her chest heaving continuously. Simon lightly knocks on the door carrying donuts, trying to soothe her emotions. Letitia takes the donuts and instantly devours 5 of them. Simon asks worriedly if she's all right, his tone full of concern. Letitia shakes her head, saying she's not all right. Her anger level is about to overflow. She asks if they can leave now. Simon nods. The obligations that needed to be fulfilled are over. He asks if he should tell the envoys to leave. Letitia is silent for a moment and finally decides to leave tomorrow. Simon suggests again that if she wants to leave now, she can. Many countries do that. Letitia explains that's what countries with bad relations do. She doesn't want to bring personal emotions into official business. Besides, leaving now would look like fleeing in disgrace. She doesn't want to be so humiliated. Tomorrow morning, she'll say what she needs to say to Cyrano's face before leaving. The next day, Cyrano can't help but ask if Letitia really must go this far. Simon thinks to himself that Cyrano regrets things awfully fast. Letitia doesn't hesitate and answers decisively that she must do this. Cyrano begs her to wait another 5 years for him. He can handle everything, but he still refused. He doesn't understand. They're both born of royalty. She should understand his difficulties. Letitia responds calmly that she can understand his difficulties, but that doesn't mean she'll forgive or accept them. Cyrano wants to pursue persuade her more, humbly begging her. Letitia mocks him. 5 years isn't so easy to endure. Besides Elena, he'll marry various harem beauties, but Cyrano defends that this is the fastest way to consolidate his throne. Letitia asks with reddened eyes if he expects her to watch him marry others again and again. Cyrano was the first person she ever loved. She once believed he was her destiny. She admits frankly that she understands choosing the throne is a rational decision. Cyrano is smart and capable. He might keep his promise. Letitia stares at him and asks if their positions were reversed. Could he accept her marrying others and still wait for her? Cyrano opens his mouth, about to answer, but is interrupted by Letitia. Letitia doesn't need him to answer now. She tells Cyrano to wait. Later, she'll ask him for the answer to this question again. She travels all the way to a village on the Kaleid border. Letitia can't help but think that if she went back to reconcile now, everything with Cyrano might return to how it was. But then she hears villagers discussing how Elena is the perfect choice for Empress, with outstanding character. Elena is smart and has never caused trouble, much better than those nobles who appear in gossip columns. She'll definitely become a good Empress. And with her solid family background, no one will be able to shake her position. Hearing this, Letitia can't help but mutter "damn it" under her breath, full of disappointment. On the other side, Kael is full of regret, muttering that Letitia left without saying goodbye to him. He curses angrily, "Damn it," venting his inner dissatisfaction, recalling how he took the initiative to greet her earlier. She reminded him that his brother was about to enter, so it would be more convenient to sit and wait. Kael had been thinking that when they met again, he'd definitely ask when she became interested in him. He quickly consoles himself. Forget it. Just forget everything. Don't think about it anymore. Anyway, it's Letitia who likes him, not him who likes her. Kael pretends not to care. Leaving is her loss. He doesn't care. Letitia hasn't even had time to immerse herself in heartbreak when shocking news strikes. She can't believe Leonard suddenly decided to give up his crown prince title. She asks her father why Leonard made such a decision. The emperor sighs and explains that he wants to give up the succession to become the grand sage. Letitia's heart tightens. Will the next crown prince be Thales? The emperor is displeased. How can she address her brother Thales so directly? According to the rules, the empress's children have priority in succession, but in the harem, princes are often favored over daughters. Moreover, Thales has considerable prestige among the nobles, which makes her even more irritated. She recalls how her mother worried herself sick over the imperial succession. Letitia can no longer hold back and says bluntly she doesn't want Thales to become crown prince. But the emperor says the throne is hers, Letitia's. Seeing her stunned, he reiterates that she will become crown princess. She thinks of Leonard. He was a prince supported by nobles and beloved by the people. Everyone said if he became a scholar, he could succeed the grand sage, and if emperor, he'd be a wise ruler. But few know that the grand sage once pointed at her and said she was the one with the qualities of a ruler. In everyone's eyes, she was just Leonard's sister, one of many princesses. What surprises her even more is that the one who recommended her as crown princess was Leonard himself. Because of this, those who follow Leonard agreed, but she's different from him. Those who support Thales and Alicia's harem faction will definitely continue to oppose her. Letitia can't help but curse inwardly that those opponents are total villains. She did study imperial governance, though it was self-study. Fortunately, her father is still alive. She still has enough time to formally study imperial governance. The more she thinks about it, the more determined she becomes. Thales is an idealist with impractical views. Before, because the succession belonged to Leonard, she never thought about competing for the throne. But now the situation has changed. She can't back down anymore. She must seize this opportunity to make up for past deficiencies. She can only train herself twice as strictly. She resolves to hire even stricter teachers. She absolutely cannot lose to Thales. She'll dash the hopes of Alicia's harem faction. She cannot lose this rare opportunity within her grasp. 2 years pass. A guard rushes in frantically, telling her to return to the palace immediately. His Majesty has been assassinated. Letitia is extremely anxious and rushes back frantically. A guard rushes over to stop her, telling her to flee for her life. Thales is sending troops to capture her. Letitia is both angry and anxious, cursing that Thales was bound to cause trouble sooner or later. She temporarily hides in Meridian City with Simon, the knight captain under her father's command. Simon reports that Thales is actually using his Majesty's body to control the pro-emperor faction, and has even forged a final will. Letitia's gaze is sharp. He wants to use this to threaten the nobles into pledging loyalty. There's no time to waste now. Simon reminds her she must turn things around before Thales wins over the neutral factions. She assesses her forces. Captain Simon is on her side. The Imperial Guard Knights also belong to her. In terms of military strength, she's more powerful, but her father's body is still in Thales' hands. If war breaks out in the capital, it will greatly damage the people's trust. She urgently needs to reverse the situation. Duchess Augustus says firmly that at a time like this, they must help Her Highness the Crown Princess. But the Duke hesitates and asks his wife if she really wants to do this. He advises his wife that given the current situation, perhaps it's better to wait and see. The Duke admits frankly that the nation needs a strong emperor, though he hopes Laetitia will ascend. He wants to see if Laetitia can overcome this crisis on her own. The Duchess directly calls him out, asking if he just wants to side with the winner. The Duke hesitantly admits he does have such concerns. The Duchess becomes anxious, urging her husband that this is exactly when they should take risks. She asks him in return if he wants to watch Laetitia shoulder this crisis alone. If that's the case, when Laetitia ascends triumphantly, they'll only be able to watch from the sidelines. The Duchess speaks earnestly. Only by helping her in difficult times will they be taken care of in the future. Seeing him silent, the Duchess presses on. Does he not care if Thalos ascends? She reminds her husband if he's forgotten the past grievances between Thalos and their family. The Duke argues that it's not that he doesn't care, he's just worried about Laetitia's capabilities. How can someone become a good emperor after only studying imperial governance for 2 years? The Duchess is both angry and exasperated. Scolding her husband for being too stubborn to listen to advice, she patiently persuades her husband to think carefully about the opportunity before them. This is the only chance for their son to become imperial consort. The Duchess is ambitious and curiously asks if he hasn't heard about Cyrano's situation. To secure Duke Drake's support, he promised to make the Duke's daughter Empress. They can clearly use this same tactic. Duke Augustus hesitates. The Duchess exclaims excitedly that they have Roland. He's the most beautiful man recognized by all Vestria's people. Duke Augustus arrives from afar with his son to greet the crown princess. Laetitia quickly thanks him. She was just worrying about how to win him over, and he came to her on his own. Duke Augustus pledges with hand on chest that he'll definitely help her take back everything. Laetitia is full of doubt. What is this man really scheming? Duke Augustus steps aside to reveal his son behind him and introduces him. The young man bows respectfully, introducing himself as Roland, honored to meet Her Highness the Crown Princess. Laetitia feels this is rather sudden. She can only smile awkwardly and say they've worked hard coming here. This person is usually hard to find, yet now he suddenly appears. But why bring him here? From Roland's expression, he clearly didn't come willingly, but the Duke teases with a smile that they both have black hair. Standing together, they really look like a perfect pair. Laetitia is shocked to hear this. This statement is way too outrageous. Soon in the meeting room, Laetitia orders people to spread the news that Thalos seized the throne while she was away, and also publicize that despite commanding strong forces, she's concerned for the people and unwilling to deploy troops. The public quickly buzzes with discussion. Some say the late emperor wanted to pass the throne to her but changed plans due to insufficient education. Others question if it's Thalos' side that's lying. The entire nation has different opinions. Half a year passes. Laetitia and Thalos have fought 3 battles and remain in a standoff. Laetitia reflects in the military camp. It seems she'll need to rely on other countries. Those around her worry and remind her this is a double-edged sword. But Laetitia is confident. She only needs their written support. Though not easy, she's confirmed this is a viable method. Other countries definitely won't want a powerful authoritarian ruler in a neighboring nation. She'll use this point, pretending to be a gentle ruler to gain support. This strategy proves effective. Laetitia successfully storms the palace. Thalos is captured alive. Thalos' mother Alicia rushes over, pleading desperately. She begs Laetitia to spare Thalos for the sake of the late king and sibling bonds. She calculates secretly that female emperors are usually more merciful. At most, it will be imprisonment. As long as he's alive, there's a chance to turn things around. They bet on Laetitia showing mercy, but underestimate her resolve. Laetitia shows no mercy and orders Thalos' execution, and exiles his birth mother Alicia, while thoroughly eradicating his remaining forces, leaving no future troubles. The Grand Sage publicly states that this princess has the qualities of a ruler. Even through rivers of blood, she can lead the Vestria Empire to prosperity. In the spring of Lumina era 517, after the late king's farewell ceremony is completed, Laetitia Valentina officially ascends the throne as the 19th emperor. On coronation day, Laetitia smiles and asks her nanny if she remembers 6 years ago when she wanted to become Khaled's empress. The nanny smiles respectfully and says she remembers everything. Laetitia turns around childishly and asks her nanny if these clothes suit her. Looking at her, the nanny cries tears of joy. Laetitia quickly comforts her, saying, "Today is a good day." The nanny quickly apologizes, saying she shouldn't cry. She just regrets that Her Majesty the Empress couldn't see this moment with her own eyes. Laetitia quickly reassures her that her mother is still alive. She'll go visit her. People who don't know the situation would definitely misunderstand hearing this. She'll wear similar clothes to go see her mother. The nanny worries and reminds her that after becoming emperor, her movements will be restricted, and the temple is far away. Laetitia smiles helplessly. No matter how difficult, she'll still go visit. The nanny smiles in agreement. Her Majesty the Empress will definitely be very happy to see this. Laetitia suddenly reflects. Years ago, when her father dismissed the nanny, she was very sad. But fortunately, because of that, the nanny survived. Laetitia sincerely thanks her, grateful that the nanny has always been by her side. Just then, Simon comes to report that His Highness Leonard has arrived. Letitia is both surprised and delighted. Leonard is here? Seeing Leonard appear, Letitia's heart leaps with joy. He does care about her after all, but Leonard keeps his head down in silence. Letitia wonders what's wrong. He explains he came because he was worried she'd be upset, and he also has something to say. Once he's done, he'll leave. Letitia feels a bit disappointed, but Leonard thinks it's better this way. Then he asks seriously, does Thalos really have to be executed? Letitia is confused, thinking he just came to lecture her. Leonard sighs. Although Talos didn't have a good relationship with them, and even occupied the palace, making their situation worse. He's still their biological brother after all. Letitia lowers her head and responds that she knows, but this won't change her decision. Leonard still tries to persuade her, arguing that she shouldn't shed blood right after ascending the throne. She should show mercy instead. Letitia coldly questions him. Their brother had almost no opposition before, but she's different. Ever since she became crown princess, she's constantly been compared to others. Hundreds of nobles are watching like vultures, looking for someone to replace her. This is absolutely not the time for mercy. Only by showing strength can she suppress the opposition. And compared to hundreds of her own people bleeding, she believes making thousands of enemies pay the price is more worthwhile. Hearing this, Leonard freezes for a moment. Although he still doesn't agree with her approach, she's the one facing the difficulties, and he has no right to interfere. He steps forward and gently embraces Letitia, offering silent comfort at the coronation ceremony venue. The coronation music plays, and the atmosphere is solemn and dignified. Letitia walks slowly, step by step, toward the throne that belongs to her. She stands on the platform to receive her coronation, taking the scepter that symbolizes imperial power. Then she turns to face everyone, accepting their bows and kneels. Cries of "Long live Her Majesty" echo throughout the entire ceremony hall. With determined eyes, Letitia declares herself Empress of Vestria. That evening after the coronation, the first Imperial Council meeting is held as scheduled. Letitia makes her position clear. Aside from promoting new people to replace the rebellious former officials, the rest of the late Emperor's ministers will remain in their posts. She believes talented people are useful, and there's no need to deliberately replace them. Letitia believes they have enough time to adapt to her governing style. As soon as she finishes speaking, Duke Augustus eagerly asks about taking an imperial consort. Letitia is somewhat displeased. The coronation just ended. Why the rush? The Duke states that the early period requires securing borders, and an empress can only take one imperial consort. He bluntly says they need to decide on the consort quickly and prioritize producing an heir. Letitia raises an eyebrow and scoffs. These people probably think she can't assemble a harem. When past emperors were urged to quickly resolve spouse and succession issues, the ministers would suggest assembling a harem, but they're demanding she can only take one imperial consort. Letitia raises an eyebrow with a slight smile, saying she's thought it over. An heir is indeed important, therefore she understands their urgency. So, she's decided to establish a harem for herself. The ministers immediately erupt in uproar, their faces full of disbelief. Letitia continues, saying she'll start by finding about 5. Duke Augustus is the first to object, emphasizing that an empress can only have one imperial consort. Letitia calmly states that one consort easily encourages the power of in-laws. Establishing a harem helps balance power. Duke Augustus continues persuading her. Although some empresses had lovers, none ever publicly assembled a harem. Letitia calmly retorts that the 5th emperor had 5 in his harem. The 11th had 6, and some had over 20. Why can everyone else have large harems but not her? She wants at least 5. Letitia smiles teasingly. The ministers shouldn't worry so much. Only by taking multiple consorts can she increase the chances of the ministers becoming imperial relatives. The ministers' minds start racing as they calculate their own opportunities. Originally, it was predetermined for Duke Augustus's son, but now everyone has a chance. The next day they're discussing taxes. Soaring prices in the capital are causing problems. One minister points out this will burden the people, but if only the capital's taxes are reduced, other regions will be dissatisfied. Letitia asks the ministers for solutions. Some advocate maintaining the status quo, believing the economy will recover. Others counter that commoners are already overburdened. Continuing the status quo might spark rebellion. Although the succession war was brief, balancing taxation has become a thorny problem. The meeting ends. Letitia can't hide her exhaustion. This is more headache-inducing than she imagined. A minister softly comforts her, firmly believing she can successfully resolve the difficulties. At this moment, someone reports that the official in charge of the harem requests an audience. Letitia immediately perks up and nods in agreement, telling them to let the official in to discuss matters. The official presents documents that future harem members need to sign, asking if she wants to add special conditions. Letitia says she has no additional requirements, but she wants to recruit harem members from other countries. In her mind, she's already secretly pondering which countries to send envoys to. The person beside her looks worried, asking if she's really all right. Laetitia says she seems much better now, but secretly gloats inside. She really wants to see Cyrano's reaction with her own eyes. She suddenly thinks of Duke Augustus and asks if he'll really send his son. Would the Duke really sacrifice his son for power? The minister beside her shakes his head. He probably won't go that far. And even if the Duke forces him, he probably won't comply. Roland suddenly declares to Duke Augustus that he wants to become the Empress's harem member. The Duke freezes in complete shock, repeatedly confirming he heard correctly. Roland says he heard the Empress is assembling a harem. The Duke confirms in disbelief. He knows and still says he wants to be a harem member? Roland nods. Hearing this, the Duke is momentarily speechless, suspecting his son doesn't understand what a harem member actually is. He quickly explains, the harem is an ancient institution, essentially the emperor's lovers. The Duke talks endlessly, pouring out all the pros and cons of being in the harem. He emphasizes that harem members have no official duties. The core role is pleasing the Empress, and children don't even have inheritance rights. Especially the nighttime duties must be mastered. But after hearing this, Roland doesn't back down at all. Instead, he's confident his learning ability is exceptional. He bluntly says once he learns one thing, he can master 10 times the techniques. The Duke claps a hand over his mouth in embarrassment. But Roland insists it's true. The Duke helplessly confirms again if he really wants to go. Roland nods firmly. He absolutely must go. The Duke completely panics. He feels things have spiraled beyond his control. Upon learning the Empress actually wants to assemble as many as 5 harem members, anger flashes in Roland's eyes. Looking at the application documents his father brought out, he doesn't hesitate to snatch one. Before his father can react, Roland unhesitatingly signs his own name. He confidently states that in less than a year, he'll be promoted to imperial consort. He earnestly asks his father to support him in becoming Laetitia's harem member and winning her favor. The Duke is somewhat frightened by this scene. He numbly agrees. For this goal, he begs his father to help him make thorough preparations. The Duke hurriedly asks what he needs: poison, aphrodisiacs, or should he bribe the guards? He can't wait to arrange everything, but Roland only asks for books on nighttime techniques. This leaves the Duke completely thunderstruck. Meanwhile, at the Kaleid border, Earl Bryant, as the person in charge of harem recruitment, feels overwhelmed with pressure. He's full of doubt, completely unable to fathom the Empress's intention in suddenly assembling a harem. His subordinate quickly comforts him. Her Majesty making him the representative for the first foreign delegation is a good thing. As someone who remained neutral during the Succession War, he feels caught between a rock and a hard place right now. Arriving at the palace, Cyrano asks in disbelief who sent him. Who does he want? What kind of person needs to be sent? Earl Bryant explains his purpose. Laetitia wants Cyrano to help select harem members to send to Vestria. Cyrano suppresses his fury and asks Earl Bryant again. She told him to come find him? Earl Bryant is terrified. Could it be that Laetitia knows he supported Thales and is now taking revenge? Frightened and somewhat stuttering, he says the Vestrian Empress has an excellent impression of Kaleid. 2 years ago, Vestria sent harem members here. This time she wants to deepen the bond between the two nations. If Kaleid can send harem members to Vestria this time, relations between the two countries will surely be more harmonious. Having said this, he presents Laetitia's personal letter. Cyrano takes Laetitia's letter, and his eyes grow colder as he reads. In the letter, Laetitia bluntly says he knows her preferences. She wants someone smart and obedient, and she specifically emphasizes no one with brown hair and gray eyes, because that would remind her of him, her ex-boyfriend, which makes her more and more irritated just thinking about it. Earl Bryant carefully looks up, terrified out of his wits by Cyrano's dark aura. Meanwhile, Kael also learns the news that Laetitia is assembling a harem. He's completely speechless, utterly unable to understand why Laetitia would suddenly do this. His subordinate asks nervously. Kael explains he's not talking about him. He means Laetitia. Hearing this, the subordinate is somewhat confused. For 3 years he's been very concerned about Laetitia, which is why he reported this. But after learning about it, why is he suddenly like this? Too calm, Kael complains. Not imperial consort but harem member, this is terrible, but the delegation must be coming to fetch him. He just doesn't understand. She wants to find a prince from a powerful nation for balance, but why as a harem member? Laetitia clearly escaped from marriage twice before. Now she's actually assembling a harem instead. Isn't that too greedy? He absolutely won't agree to it. Kael says he needs to go talk with his brother Cyrano. His subordinate somewhat awkwardly informs him that His Majesty has decided not to send any harem members. Cyrano has already refused Laetitia's request. He even sent the delegation straight back without showing any courtesy. Hearing this news, Kael loses his composure entirely. Kael barges in despite attempts to stop him, shouting for his imperial brother at the top of his lungs. Cyrano doesn't understand what's going on and asks back, doesn't he have hands? Doesn't he know how to knock? Kael retorts self-righteously that he clearly used his hands to push aside the knights blocking his way. Cyrano teases him, long time no see, you've become cuter. Kael happily asks, really? He's somewhat speechless, bluntly saying he was being sarcastic. Kael urgently says that's not what he's asking about. Cyrano drops the smile and tells him to speak clearly if he has a question. Kael steps forward, urgently confirming whether the delegation really left. Cyrano raises an eyebrow and confirms with a question. Kael asks in disbelief if he's gone mad. Cyrano's gaze turns cold, reminding him that he's now the emperor of a nation. Kael is somewhat at a loss for words, asking quietly, do you want to go to war with Vestria? A few years ago, didn't he also accept the harem members Vestria sent? He just can't recall the name right now. Seeing that Cyrano doesn't remember either, Kael exclaims, that's your harem member, how could you forget? Cyrano impatiently interrupts, telling him to get to the point. Kael is emotionally agitated. He accuses his brother's approach as despicable and will displease Vestria. Cyrano patiently explains, the Prime Minister's son is married, the Grand Duke's only son can't be sent, and the only other unmarried ones are women. Kael thumps his own chest. Cyrano asks in disbelief, he wants to become a harem member? Before Kael can respond, Cyrano categorically refuses again. Kael stamps his feet anxiously. He explains that Empress Laetitia sent the delegation specifically for him. Cyrano's face is full of doubt. Why would he think that? Kael speaks with conviction. She definitely knows he's the only one who meets the requirements. Sending the delegation means she specifically wants him. He looks nonchalant, candidly saying he doesn't mind. After all, she likes him, and as royalty he'll eventually be promoted to imperial consort. Cyrano's face turns ashen. He coldly spits out 2 words, get out. Kael refuses to give up and calls out again, but Cyrano ignores him. He leaves with an angry snort. Cyrano angrily mutters Laetitia's name. Is this her way of revenge? Laetitia points at some documents, telling Simon to look at this. Marquis Sebastian on the side quietly observes. Although they grew up together, they now have a sovereign-subject relationship. Laetitia asks if he understands. Simon picks up the documents to look through them. Turns out they're harem applications from various places. He furrows his brow. Laetitia sighs with some emotion. She didn't expect so many applicants, far exceeding expectations. She originally only planned to temporarily summon 5 harem members. Now she needs to select carefully. Marquis Sebastian is shocked and asks back, did she say temporarily? Laetitia says bluntly that hearts change easily. She's a devoted empress now, but who knows about the future? But speaking of which, there's something that surprises her. She didn't expect Roland would be willing to come, but he's probably not volunteering. The Duke likely forced him into it. However, Roland is the son of a meritorious subject, so she must give face and select him. She plans. She still needs to select one person from Collide, and the other 3 should be useful. Laetitia smiles cunningly. If they're equally qualified, she'll choose the handsome ones. Marquis Sebastian is confident. His eye for selection has always been excellent and won't be wrong. Laetitia gazes out the window, reflecting that she's been on the throne for half a month now. The first week was too busy to adapt. Now she's finally getting into the rhythm, and the delegation should be back soon. Laetitia ponders silently, wondering what kind of response she'll receive. At this moment, the door is knocked. Laetitia asks what the matter is. A guard suddenly comes to report that the delegation has returned, and Earl Bryant is waiting. Laetitia's eyes light up, unable to hide her excitement. She immediately tells the guard to invite him in. Earl Bryant steps forward to report. The Collide Emperor refused to send harem members and sent them back that very day. The smile on Laetitia's face instantly freezes, her entire body radiating anger. Earl Bryant presents Cyrano's reply letter. She snatches the reply and reads it with a frown. In the letter, Cyrano asks aggrievedly how she could make such a request of him. After reading, she can't help but laugh coldly, not understanding what he's talking about. Her request is something any emperor would do. It's not difficult, yet he dares refuse her. She jerks her head up, shouting Marquis Sebastian's name with fury. Marquis Sebastian immediately steps forward. Laetitia writes a letter with a cold smile. Laetitia's ultimatum is ice cold with every word. Refusing the delegation is contempt for Vestria and will be met with retaliation. She accuses him. In 3 years, she never received a single letter. It's all lies. Cyrano feels completely wronged, not understanding why he's being accused like this. He clearly wrote letters and sent gifts every week, never once slacking. Exhaustion washes over him. He really can't figure out the reason. The once cheerful Laetitia now only faces him with mockery. He suddenly denies it. Laetitia's behavior was somewhat crude before. It's just that he found her attempts to hide it in front of him cute. But why would she accuse him of never writing? Could someone have intercepted his letters and gifts to her along the way? He never expected this to calm Laetitia down. But anyone who dares tamper with an emperor's gifts to the crown princess is definitely a problem. After pondering for a while, he feels that writing it this way, Laetitia should be able to detect something suspicious. After that, as long as both sides investigate, the truth will come to light. But what should be done about sending harem members? This can't lead to severed relations between the 2 nations. The next day, he repeatedly instructs Kael, this is only temporary, and he'll definitely bring him back at the right time. Kyle impatiently says he knows. Cyrano instructs him again to control his bad temper. Kyle raises an eyebrow and asks back, "Is my imperial brother actually worried about me?" Cyrano responds indifferently, half and half. But Kyle asks who the other half of his worry is for. Cyrano says impatiently, it's just half worried and half not worried. He then embraces him and seriously lays down the ground rules up front, establishing clear boundaries. He warns Kyle he's only going temporarily and must not touch a single hair on Laetitia's head. Kyle deliberately provokes, what if Empress Laetitia makes the first move? Cyrano is certain this is impossible, but Kyle is utterly narcissistic. He thinks she'll offer kisses the moment he arrives. He laughs heartily, not taking Cyrano's instructions to heart at all. Remembering something, Kyle suddenly speaks up. He confirms again whether his brother really wants to divorce his sister-in-law. He feels his sister-in-law doesn't seem like a bad person, and advises his brother to continue living with her, even though his power is now stable. Keeping Duke Drake would be more secure. Cyrano states bluntly that he married for this purpose in the first place, although he agrees with what Kyle says. Elena was Hector's fiancée after all, and they had deep feelings for each other, but he killed Hector. Cyrano firmly states he will never keep a hidden danger by his side. To this day, neither dares to let their guard down around the other. Kyle curiously asks what he plans to do after the divorce. Does he have someone else he loves? Cyrano doesn't want to discuss it further, only reiterating that he should stay in Vestria for 6 months. At that time, he'll find an excuse to bring him back. He tells his brother to remember this. Kyle says with a smile he's almost memorized it. Cyrano emphasizes again, he must not develop feelings for Laetitia, nor can he establish any authority. He's just a temporary bargaining chip in a transaction. Inside the Vestrian palace, everyone is surprised that Cyrano would actually send a harem member and have him accompany the delegation. Simon reminds Laetitia that this expression on her face will be hard to maintain, but Laetitia doesn't hear him. She's just full of anticipation for her harem member in the carriage from Collide. The carriage slowly comes to a halt. She suppresses her excitement and steps forward to open the door. The carriage door opens, and the familiar face before her leaves her frozen in place. Laetitia is utterly confused. How could he be here? She can't help but cry out inwardly. Where is the harem member she was expecting? Laetitia comforts herself. Maybe Kyle just came along for the ride. Kyle suddenly hugs her and proudly declares he's finally caught her. Everyone is stunned, not understanding what caught means. Kyle confidently states, "You must be very happy to have me now," but the next second he acts aloof, telling her not to get ahead of herself. He won't easily open his heart. Laetitia just feels utterly baffled. Simon is somewhat puzzled, confirming in a low voice, "Is this Cyrano's brother?" Laetitia thought Cyrano would send a nobleman. She angrily curses that Cyrano is a lunatic. She just pressured him to send a harem member, and he actually sends his own brother. What is he thinking? The Chamberlain leads Kyle to his quarters. Considering his loyalty to the late emperor and Laetitia, he decides to evaluate this special harem candidate to see if he'll be helpful to Laetitia. Kyle's appearance is impeccable, a perfect score. His family background is even more top tier. But when it comes to evaluating his personality, he gradually furrows his brow. As soon as he enters the room, Kyle complains it's too cramped and asks when he can move to proper quarters. Then he starts calculating, on his own. If the quarters are too simple, he'll decorate them himself. Just as the Chamberlain starts to speak, he abruptly asks about Laetitia's bedroom location. The Chamberlain is displeased inwardly. At least Cyrano had better manners than him. He patiently asks why. Kyle says the Empress will come looking for him anyway. He might as well go wait there himself to save the trouble. The Chamberlain can tolerate it no longer, mentally giving his personality test a 0. On the other side, Earl Bryant seems restless. Seeing this, Laetitia asks in confusion what's wrong. He hesitates for a while, finally requesting that everyone else leave. He seems to have something extremely confidential to report. Though puzzled, Laetitia still dismisses the others, leaving only Simon. She signals that Simon doesn't need to avoid hearing this and tells the Earl to speak directly. The Earl then takes out a sealed letter. He says it's entrusted by the Collide Emperor to be given to her when no one else is around. Seeing it's from Cyrano, Laetitia's confusion deepens. The letter questions why she never received the letters and gifts he sent every week. Laetitia freezes. She never saw anything at all. And Cyrano also requested that Earl Bryant give her this letter when no one else was around. She knows well that although Cyrano betrayed her, he would never lie about this. The assassin of the late emperor hasn't been identified yet, which already has her at her wit's end. Now someone actually dares to intercept an emperor's letters to the crown princess, temporarily suppressing her doubts. She thanks Earl Bryant. She will definitely investigate this matter and punish those responsible. She tells Earl Bryant to withdraw and rest well. Seeing Earl Bryant leave, Laetitia's expression turns grave. She tells Simon her letters and gifts were intercepted. Simon immediately asks if she suspects someone inside Vestria. Laetitia admits she's unsure whether it was Collide, Vestria, or another country. Cyrano risked sending a private letter precisely because he couldn't determine the source. This matter may not be related to the assassination, but they must be extremely cautious. Intercepting an emperor's items is already a serious crime. If the culprit is in Collide, it must involve the sending process. If in Vestria, it's likely related related to receiving personnel. She emphasizes this needs to be investigated secretly and entrusts Simon with full responsibility. Night falls. Letitia silently berates herself. She actually forgot to be angry because of the stolen letters. She should be even angrier that he sent his own brother into her harem. But fortunately, being busy has helped her temporarily forget the pain of parting with Cyrano. She probably won't think about it anymore in the future. After all, she's working very hard to overcome that pain. Dragging her exhausted body back to her bedchamber, Letitia is stunned. Kale is actually wearing a bathrobe sitting brazenly in her room. She can't help but wonder, what on earth is going on? Seeing her return, Kale immediately stands to greet her. Letitia suppresses her anger and steps forward to question him. What is the prince doing here? But Kyle doesn't answer directly. Instead, he emphasizes that she should call him Kyle. Letitia is speechless. She can only compromise and ask what Kyle is doing here. Kyle says he wants to share the first bottle of wine with her after his arrival. He dramatically declares, "Your Majesty gets drunk on me, while I get drunk on wine." But these words sound incredibly sarcastic to Letitia. She thinks he's still mocking her because of what happened in Calais before. Kyle complains that waiting in her room was refused, and the chamberlain even wanted him to wait in the corridor. She forcefully suppresses her surging anger, planning to go inside and communicate with him properly. After all, Kyle will stay for at least 6 months. Clearing things up early might save trouble. But just then, Duke Augustus suddenly rushes up urgently. He calls out loudly that he has urgent matters to report, his tone both pressing and serious. The timing is too coincidental to have such urgent matters at this late hour, but she still sits with Duke Augustus in the study to discuss. The Duke reports breathlessly that Prince Thales has been found to have major suspicions. During the Succession War, he actually attempted to collude with external forces. Duke Augustus reports that Thales attempted to draw external forces into the succession struggle. Which country specifically hasn't been identified yet? Letitia is shocked and deeply anxious. The Duke analyzes neighboring countries all supported her initially, and Khalid even sent a prince to the harem. These shouldn't be possible. Letitia can't hide her astonishment. She didn't expect Thales to have put so much effort in over 6 months. She asks the Duke if Thales really used the imperial seal. The imperial seal is kept in the palace year-round, and its authority is equivalent to the emperor's personal signature. But if the seal was truly used to recruit forces, there must be written agreements. These agreements will have corresponding costs, and the signatory nations will fulfill the agreements as required later. Letitia can't help but have a headache. Friendly nations would never make absurd demands. Thales must have contacted non-friendly nations. If she wants to explain the seal was stolen, those countries will most likely not accept this explanation. Letitia immediately orders Duke Augustus to definitely investigate which countries signed and the content of the agreements. Even without official records, using the seal means there must be written documents. After receiving the order, the Duke hesitates for a moment but finally asks, when can his son Roland enter the palace? Letitia says they need to wait until all 5 harem members are selected, then arrange their entry together. Kyle is a foreign prince with no residence yet, so he temporarily receives very important person treatment. But she hasn't officially made him a harem member. The Duke returns home filled with worry. Opening the door and seeing his son, he can't help but feel concerned. His son, Roland, is equally matched in appearance with Kyle. Seeing his father return with an unusual expression, Roland proactively steps forward to ask. The Duke informs him that Prince Kyle of Khalid has entered the palace today. Roland has never heard this name and curiously asks if he's already been made a harem member. As he finishes speaking, he closes the book about nighttime techniques in his hand. The Duke shakes his head, but the other is using the excuse of having no residence to temporarily enjoy very important person treatment. Khalid also didn't entrust him with national affairs. Roland dismisses it, then he's not very important. He says foreign harem members are just for diplomatic strategy. No need to argue with someone not very bright. The Duke quickly refutes. Kale is definitely not as simple as he appears. He's not only handsome, equally matched with Roland in looks, but also has an exotic appeal. More importantly, Kyle is very cunning. On his first day in the palace, he ran to wait outside Her Majesty's bedchamber wanting to share her bed. Roland is utterly shocked. The Duke instructs him to definitely be on guard. Hearing this, he becomes even more curious. After becoming a harem member, he'll eventually see Kyle daily. Better to plan early. Roland decides to visit the palace tomorrow first, to see for himself what kind of person the other is. In the study, Letitia looks at the application forms, pondering. The Prime Minister remained neutral during the Succession War, which allowed her to barely keep the throne. But the Prime Minister's power doesn't match Duke Augustus. Gavin is Prime Minister Reginald's second son. Tristan, heir to Ambrose Trading Company, probably joined the harem selection to find a patron. Only Cain, the mercenary king, always seems somewhat strange. Marquis Sebastian immediately asks if he should be eliminated. The Magic Academy has backup candidates. Letitia hesitates, though uneasy, but she feels it would be too much of a waste to eliminate him directly. The harem candidates each have their strengths. Roland and Kyle are top-tier handsome men. Gavin follows the warm and gentle route. Tristan has an innate intellectual air. Choosing Cain with his wild beauty for the last one isn't bad either. At the Duke's residence, seeing his son hasn't returned yet, the Duke paces back and forth, filled with worry. The Duchess can't stand it anymore and advises him to stop pacing. Just then, a servant reports that Roland has returned. The Duke is overjoyed and hurries forward to ask how things went today. Roland nods, informing him they've met, but his expression is somewhat unusual. The Duke hurriedly asks what the other said and if there were any excessive words. Roland speaks calmly. Kyle said Her Majesty has had a crush on him for years. The Duke gapes in utter disbelief. This is absurd. How could Her Majesty have a crush on him? But Roland says he didn't just say that. Suppressing his anger, he says Kyle mocked him. Even if he becomes a harem member, he'll just be decorative. The Duke is furious beyond words, demanding why his son didn't refute this at the time. Roland admits Kyle is indeed cunning. He's noted this humiliation. He vows to become imperial consort and drive the other out. He tells the Duke not to worry. Having just met Roland, Kyle keeps cursing in anger. That arrogant and shameless guy will actually be living under the same roof as him. The attendant is somewhat helpless. Just a few words of argument and it's come to this. How can the next 6 months possibly pass peacefully? He quickly comforts him. There are still things to be grateful for. Kyle retorts he was called an ignorant foreigner, and the person insulting him has a devastatingly handsome appearance. The attendant explains, at least you've learned restraint. In the past, you might have already thrown a punch. He says with relief that Kyle has truly become more mature, but Kyle doesn't buy it at all. The attendant comforts him. Even if they're both in the Empress's harem later, they won't live together. Kyle immediately orders the attendant to find the chamberlain. He wants to live in the room farthest from Roland. He secretly vows in his heart. Once he becomes imperial consort, he'll definitely strip the other bare and expel him from the palace. In the underground mail management room of Meridian City's Lord's Mansion, Simon requests to examine letters sent to Laetitia from mid-515 to year's end. The person in charge informs him there were 321 letters for the Crown Princess total, of which 125 were intercepted for review. Simon asks what review means. The person in charge explains it's for informal letters or those without seals. He continues asking who's responsible. The person in charge before Simon says it's himself. These intercepted letters were all insulting letters written by Prince Daelus's supporters. Most senders were anonymous, with occasionally bold ones using real names. But whether anonymous or not, they've all been investigated now. But Simon's intuition tells him there's definitely more. He insists on getting all related letters, lists, and logs, and all 321 letters submitted to Her Majesty should be given to him. Returning home, his father calls out to Simon with some concern. His father says he has some personal matters to discuss with him. Simon signals him to speak directly. His father hesitantly asks, doesn't he have feelings for Her Majesty? Soon the harem will be finalized and they'll receive her favor. Does he really want to just be the knight commander and watch her favor others? Simon hesitates to speak, then finally smiles bitterly. He says with acceptance, I believe there are many ways to love someone. Rather than becoming a man who brings Her Majesty pleasure, I'd rather give her peace of mind. While others wait for Her Majesty in the bedchamber, I can stand by her side and protect her. That's already enough for me. This is my way of loving someone. Though worried, his father respects his choice and only hopes he won't get hurt. The next day, Laetitia has just finished handling official business. Simon appears before her right on time. Laetitia immediately greets him happily, asking how things are going. Simon respectfully says there's still much to investigate. Laetitia asks with some concern, isn't this too hard on you? But Simon teasingly says, missing her is what makes him tired, making Laetitia laugh. She immediately excitedly pulls out the preliminary harem list, asking Simon to help advise. Since Kyle wasn't their choice, there's no file on him. She wants him to help look at the others. On the list are Duke Augustus's eldest son Roland, Prime Minister Reginald's second son Gavin, and Ambrose Trading Company's heir Tristan. For the last one, Laetitia acts mysterious, building suspense. She asks Simon if he recognizes him. Simon glances at it and says with displeasure, this is Cain. Hearing this, Laetitia smiles brightly, saying approvingly, yes, that's Cain the mercenary king. She turns her head and asks expectantly what he thinks of her choices. Simon officially states, from a harem diversity perspective, not bad. Laetitia continues asking, then from a man's perspective, are there any bad men? Simon's jealousy surges. He states bluntly, not one of them is a good man. Marquis Sebastian timely suggests arranging for candidates to enter the palace in 10 days, after submitting their documents. Laetitia readily agrees. She's in an excellent mood, curious about Cyrano's feelings when he learns of this. Will he be angry about this? Soon she sighs again. He sent someone over, so apparently he's not that affected. And he specifically chose a lunatic. But Simon is certain Cyrano must be furious inside, just pretending to be calm on the surface. Laetitia sighs helplessly. If only that were true. Simon is about to take the opportunity to invite Laetitia to dinner. But just then an attendant rushes in. The attendant urgently reports that Alicia has been on a hunger strike for several days. She's making a fuss, insisting she must see Laetitia. Daelus tugged at his father's sleeve, acting coy and begging him to go fishing together. He shook his father's arm, repeatedly, his voice sickly sweet. Watching the family of three laughing and playing happily by the river, Laetitia's heart stung like needles piercing it. That was her father too. After returning, the Empress hid in a corner, unable to hold back her tears. Watching this scene, Laetitia's heart ached for her mother. She confronted Thalus to demand justice, but Thalus warned her that he was the older brother and she must obey. Furious, Laetitia kicked him and shouted, asking what nonsense he was spouting. Thalus rolled around in pain, crying out for his mother. Seeing this, Alicia scolded her harshly, saying her foul temper was exactly like the Empress's, vicious and detestable. With those words, she reached out and shoved Laetitia hard. Laetitia lost her footing and fell into the river with a splash. Seeing this, panic flashed across Alicia's face for an instant. The next second, she turned and fled without hesitation. When Laetitia was pulled out, she was already soaked through, and the Empress's heart ached at the sight. She angrily demanded to know who dared do such a thing. Laetitia looked at Alicia and murmured softly that she reminded her of the past. Alicia showed no courtesy, bluntly stating that Laetitia had been a manipulative, wicked child since young. She smiled wickedly, saying she too remembered the past. Laetitia coldly reminded her that she was now Her Majesty, not Her Highness. But Alicia insisted that in her heart there were only two majesties, her husband and son, and demanded Laetitia return her son. Laetitia laughed self-deprecatingly, remarking that she'd become much more tolerant since taking the throne. In the past, every time she heard Alicia speak ill of her, rage would burn within her. But now, hearing these words again, she only sees them as futile struggles. Laetitia laughs triumphantly. In the end, she's the one who won. She asks Alicia concisely why she wanted to see her. Alicia's eyes are urgent, her voice pleading as she asks where her son is. Laetitia is surprised. Alicia still doesn't know. She hesitates, thinking that since Alicia is imprisoned for life, perhaps she should comfort her with a lie, but she doesn't want to see her at peace. So she decides to tell her the truth. Her voice is frighteningly calm as she informs Alicia that her son Thalus is dead. She personally ordered Thalus's execution. Alicia's pupils constrict in shock, muttering over and over, "How could this be?" She screams hysterically at Laetitia that Thalus was her own brother. Laetitia sneers in response. "Thalus was only your son, and he tried to kill me and take everything. He also made my mother cry," her voice filled with resentment. Trembling with rage, Alicia curses Laetitia as a wicked girl, insisting that even if Thalus had taken the throne, he wouldn't have harmed her. Laetitia scoffs. He allied with external forces to seize power, so how would he spare her after taking the throne? Alicia retorts angrily that Thalus wasn't that cold-blooded. Laetitia hums softly, "I'm not cold-blooded toward my mother either." Losing control, Alicia spits at Laetitia's face. Simon reacts swiftly, immediately drawing his sword and standing guard before Laetitia. Alicia roars at Simon, accusing him of betraying the late emperor and murdering the prince. She curses Simon repeatedly as a traitor, a corrupt official who brought chaos to the court. After taking the handkerchief, Laetitia stops Simon, saying coldly to ignore her. Her gaze is icy. Even if she were to kill, she wouldn't end Alicia with a blade. Laetitia turns to leave. Alicia screams at her, retreating back, calling her cold-blooded and vicious. She turns back with a cold laugh, admitting she's thoroughly wicked, so stop using hunger strikes as resistance. It's useless against me. Alicia laughs coldly, questioning whether Laetitia truly thinks she's won. She curses through gritted teeth, calling Laetitia an utterly vicious demon. She will be betrayed by the one she cherishes most. She warns Laetitia to beware of betrayal by the one she trusts most. Alicia laughs maniacally, emphasizing this isn't a curse but words from her heart. She declares that when the prophecy comes true, Laetitia will remember these words. Simon lowers his sword, advising her not to take that woman's mad ravings to heart. But Laetitia is filled with worry. The letter thief and the regicide are still at large. Simon volunteers, saying he'll stay up all night if needed to cross-check Meridian City's ledgers and correspondence. Laetitia asks if he needs her to help with the review. Simon's face lights up with joy, saying he'd be happy, but he politely declines, saying the head steward would scold him if he found out. She immediately orders an increase in personnel to monitor Alicia and ensure her safety. She specifically instructs to select people with clear backgrounds and have multiple guards rotate shifts. After making the arrangements, Laetitia's gaze is resolute. She decides to go incognito tomorrow. Hearing she plans to go incognito, Simon can't help but ask if she wants to meet the harem candidates first. Laetitia says frankly that the others are fine, but the merchant Tristan and mercenary King Kane, she knows nothing about them. Ever since meeting Alicia, she feels she should see them clearly first, to confirm whether they're allies or threats. But Simon is conflicted inside. Should he return this handkerchief or not? The next day, Laetitia changes into ordinary clothes and walks through the streets, feeling everything is pleasant and relaxed, as if she shed the pressure of being Empress. On the bustling street, a man secretly follows behind her. She can't help but recall the guard captain's complaint that going incognito while the situation is still unstable is too risky. Laetitia can't help but smile secretly, her gaze sweeping across the marketplace with heartfelt emotion. A month ago, this place was in chaos due to the succession war, but it has already transformed. Watching the streets restored to prosperity, she thinks to herself, looks like I'm doing a decent job. She turns to ask for directions to Granville Grand Hotel, and Simon, guessing she wants to meet the heir of the major trading company, leads the way. Inside Granville Grand Hotel, this is the capital's most luxurious hotel, with rates so high that even nobles can barely afford long-term stays. Yet Tristan has booked half the building and stays here permanently with his attendants. Letitia silently marvels. The wealthiest heir truly lives up to his reputation. She sits down nearby and locks eyes with a man. After a glance, the man instantly disappears from everyone's sight. Letitia's attention is drawn to a magazine, with the cover boldly proclaiming the birth of an unprecedented male harem, and she's the subject. Inside is a complete breakdown of the harem candidates, comparing the Duke's eldest son with the foreign prince, speculating who will claim the top position. It even compares Tristan's extraordinary beauty with the exotic handsomeness of Khalid, looking at all the men vying for the Empress's embrace. The detailed information is astonishing. Letitia wonders, how did they even gather all this information? Flipping through the magazine, she can't help but wonder why Tristan hasn't appeared yet. Did he go on a trip? Simon agrees. After all, it's still daytime. She mutters to herself that at this rate, she might waste the entire day here. Just as she grows impatient, the man from earlier suddenly appears, stumbling unsteadily. Letitia is puzzled, but suddenly realizes, could Tristan have appeared? Sure enough, the next second Tristan suddenly appears, and Letitia, looking at his shrewd appearance, inexplicably grows suspicious. Could this man be involved in some shameful activities like drug use? At that moment, the man suddenly crashes straight into Tristan. Then, in an annoyed tone, he stops Tristan directly, demanding to know if he doesn't need to apologize for bumping into someone. Tristan continues walking silently forward, ignoring him. Unable to bear it any longer, the man angrily grabs Tristan's shoulder, demanding a response. Letitia instantly tenses up. It worked! She eagerly anticipates how Tristan will respond next. Unexpectedly, he opens his mouth and curses, calling the other man a bastard. Letitia feels her idealized image of him as refined and beautiful shatter. She's utterly incredulous. The man grabs Tristan's collar and continues demanding why he won't apologize for bumping into someone, his attitude very firm. Tristan lets out a cold laugh. Then without hesitation, he flings off his coat, sending the man flying with it. Surprisingly, the man steadies himself and doesn't fall. The manager rushes forward, with alarm, trying to mediate, and seeing this, Tristan arrogantly declares he'll let him off this time. Feeling humiliated, the man retorts stubbornly, asking what he means by let him off. Tristan questions disdainfully whether he's faking drunkenness to provoke him, and now pretending nothing happened. The manager quickly urges him to calm down, saying they'll ask the drunk guest to leave, but Tristan insists he's not drunk. That person has no smell of alcohol, was walking fine when coming downstairs and only started staggering after approaching him. Clearly deliberate provocation. Do you think faking slurred speech can fool me? He questions whether the man's drunkenness only selectively manifests during provocation. Tristan presses closer, demanding to know who instructed the man to put on this act. The knight hastily denies it, but his words falter. Tristan observes his pupils and lip movements, becoming more certain of his suspicion. His gaze is piercing as he searches the crowd for whoever is scheming against him. Letitia feels guilty and quickly hides her face behind the magazine in her hands. But the next second, Tristan has already walked straight up to her. Letitia's heart tightens as she hears him say teasingly, "Oh my, looks like if she doesn't act soon, she'll be caught." Tristan sees through Letitia instantly, teasing that if she doesn't want to get caught, she should stop now, and using newspapers or magazines to hide her face is useless. He reminds Letitia that for this kind of act, she should find a better actor or an actual drunk. No matter how much a palace knight pretends to be crude, he's still easily recognized. Letitia can't help but think that such talent shouldn't be summoned into the harem, but should be hired as an administrator instead, though he's completely different from what she imagined. Tristan's intelligence truly exceeds expectations. At Kane's lodging, everyone has serious expressions, devoid of vitality. Though many people are present, the atmosphere is eerily cold, as if no one is there. Letitia stares at the tightly closed door, muttering to herself about why there's been no movement for so long. Others, seeing her ask about Kane, say that aside from showing his face on check-in day, he hasn't appeared since. Letitia looks puzzled, and others respond helplessly that he neither goes out to eat nor uses the toilet. Even the inn owner can't help but mutter, suspecting he might have died in his room. His meals consist of jerky from his backpack, but he really has never used the toilet. He continues questioning, Dawn, they find it strange? Coming to an inn but staying in the room gnawing on jerky? Returning to the palace, the nanny hurries over to ask Letitia's impressions of meeting the harem candidates. Are they as imagined, or did the portraits flatter them? Letitia says frankly that she didn't see one, and the other was practically portrait fraud. The nanny is confused, so Letitia explains it's not simple flattery, the impression is completely different. With that, she shifts the topic, expressing concern for Gavin. The nanny thinks Gavin is well-behaved and shy, a good obedient child, but Letitia frowns, feeling this good boy will surely be bullied, worrying if he can endure. A few days later, the day finally arrives for the harem to enter the palace, and Letitia remarks that entering the palace might be tough for them. Fortunately, the banquet allows only harem members' relatives to attend. Simon also says the guests guests invited by the harem members will have a hard time leaving. Laetitia senses something off in his words and asks Simon what's wrong. She says frankly that Simon's tone just now sounded like he was hoping they'd have a hard time. Suddenly she exclaims that Ambrose arrived first, and Simon guesses he came directly from the trading company. Tristan's carriage is magnificent and splendid, clearly worth a fortune at a glance. Someone suggests quickly catching up with the carriages following behind. Unexpectedly, they catch up easily, and can't help but wonder what heavy cargo is inside. Simon looks vigilant, quickly asking if they should increase security forces in the area. Laetitia looks into the distance and declines. They shouldn't need to increase forces. The Night Shadow Mercenary Company has arrived. The Night Shadow Mercenary Company's formation is neat and crisp, their presence imposing. Watching this display, Laetitia can't help but admire how impressive it truly is. After that, the carriages from Duke Augustus's household and Prime Minister Reginald's household slowly arrive. Once all the guests have arrived, the palace's heavy gates slowly close. Inside the grand banquet hall, lights blaze brightly, and as the announcement rings out, the 19th Empress of Vestria Empire, Laetitia, arrives. As soon as Laetitia enters, she keenly notices the harem members have automatically divided into two factions. She mutters to herself, wondering if these people did this deliberately. Though she dislikes this feeling of factional opposition, she still plans to wait and see. She can't help but think Cain looks too frail, worrying he won't be mercenary king for long before retiring. Marquis Sebastian steps forward, reminding Laetitia that the ceremony can begin. He presents the documents, then turns to face the 5 harem members. Marquis Sebastian respectfully calls out Prince Kael from Collide, asking him to review and sign. Kael signs without any hesitation, and the next step is placing rings. Laetitia follows the procedure and places them on each. Cain recites his oath of loyalty, pledging to forever serve and adore Her Majesty. But Laetitia's mind is perfectly clear. She knows well that not one of these people truly loves her, and she accepts it calmly. She's not doing this for love either, but simply to have them compete and draw attention. What she wants is for them to help strengthen her imperial power, while they seek wealth and prestige. This is an alliance signed on the premise of mutual benefit. After all, even the most genuine love can cool overnight when faced with interests. She silently resolves that as long as she remains Empress, they won't dare betray her. With Laetitia's command, this banquet filled with exchanges of interests officially begins. Laetitia sees through everyone's different motives at a glance. The atmosphere between Duke Augustus and the Prime Minister is tense. Yet their wives are unusually calm, as if it's none of their concern. The Ambrose people are discussing business even at such an occasion, truly admirable. The Night Shadow Mercenary Company remains as they were days ago, eerily quiet. The Collade nobles only cluster together, interacting among themselves. And the harem isn't peaceful either. Tristan teases that Cain is as pale as a corpse, and Cain immediately reaches for his blade. Tristan quickly backs down and blocks his movement. Roland and Kael's gazes clash, competing with each other, undercurrents surging. Gavin keeps his head down awkwardly, his entire body radiating discomfort. Faced with this chaotic scene, Laetitia can only feel deep helplessness. Returning to her room, the nanny immediately asks if she found anyone appealing today. Laetitia sighs, especially worried about Gavin, and the nanny remarks that Gavin has been taciturn since childhood, suggesting she take care of him for old time's sake. Thinking of their childhood connection, Laetitia promises to keep an eye on his situation, though they weren't close. As children, she can't let him be bullied, or she might not even see him around anymore. At that moment, the guard captain requests an audience, breaking the room's tranquility. Laetitia walks out puzzled, asking what brings him here. The head steward reminds her that tonight is the first night, and Laetitia doesn't understand what first night means. The head steward is at a loss whether to laugh or cry as he explains it's the first night after the harem enters the palace. Her harem members are all waiting for her favor, and she needs to select one. The guard captain asks who her preferred choice is, and Laetitia falls into indecision. She weighs each option in her mind. If she chooses Gavin, his personality is gentle, and choosing him might help boost his prestige. But she hasn't spoken with Cain yet, and she's full of curiosity. However, if she wants to give Duke Augustus face, it's better to visit Roland first. After much deliberation, she decides to give Duke Augustus face. So she chooses Roland for the first night. In the harem quarters, the guard captain informs her that per Kael's request, they arrange the room farthest from Roland for him. He explains in detail that counterclockwise from the entrance are Roland, Cain, Gavin, Kael, and Tristan's rooms. Laetitia nods, roughly memorizing everyone's locations, until she reaches Roland's door. Only then does the guard captain bow and take his leave. Standing before the door, she takes a deep breath to prepare herself mentally. She pushes open the door and walks in resolutely, parting the beaded curtain before her. She sees Roland, who has been waiting, facing him up close when they're not familiar. Awkwardness instantly spreads through Laetitia's entire body as she stands frozen. Laetitia thinks to herself that as Empress, she should take the initiative, but racking her brain, she can't think of what topic to start with. Just as she's at a loss, Roland takes the initiative and approaches. He gently brushes the hair behind Laetitia's ear, asking tenderly if she's nervous. Laetitia admits somewhat awkwardly that she is. Roland kisses her cheek lightly, saying he is too, but she doesn't sense any nervousness from him at all. Roland doesn't respond but whispers for her to listen to his heartbeat. Laetitia leans close to his chest and listens carefully for a moment, then says bluntly that she can't hear anything at all. Roland doesn't give up, but instead unbuttons his shirt, revealing a large expanse of his chest. He reaches out to embrace Laetitia, pressing her head against his chest. He asks softly again, "Surely your majesty can hear my heartbeat now?" Inside the Khalid palace, Kael still hasn't replied, and Cyrano anxiously asks his subordinates. Still nothing. Cyrano feels a headache coming on. He clearly told Kael to write as soon as he arrived at the Vestria Empire. His subordinate tries to console him, suggesting Kael might be busy adapting to the new environment. But Cyrano ruthlessly points out that a guy who ran away to an enemy empire's palace doesn't need to adapt. He knows perfectly well that Kael can figure everything out in 2 hours. Then he panics. Will Laetitia take her anger out on Kael, or will Kael turn the tables and bully Laetitia instead? What if their relationship gradually improves? Thinking of this, he feels an inexplicable pang. Wait, calculating the time. The oath ceremony just ended not long ago. Kael should have just returned to his quarters. Unable to contain his restlessness, he orders in a low voice for his servant to summon Adrian. Who knows how long they'd have to wait for Kael to contact them on his own. Before the servant can respond, a figure suddenly bursts in, interrupting. Elena stands at the door, bowing slightly in greeting. Cyrano asks perfunctorily what she wants, and she asks him point blank if he's going to divorce her. Hearing this, Cyrano scoffs and counters. Isn't she asking when she already knows? Elena smiles, saying she just wants to hear him say it himself. Cyrano laughs coldly, asking why she's going to such unnecessary trouble. Didn't she already know? The spies she planted should have reported many times over 3 years. Why the pretense? On the other side, Laetitia wakes from sleep, turns her head and glimpses Roland beside her, freezes instantly, then reacts the next second. After the shock passes, she can't help but secretly admire his handsome sleeping face. Her cheeks flush hot, and she shyly buries her face in the covers. Just as she looks away, Roland opens his eyes and stares at her, asking if she's awake. Laetitia feels embarrassed and responds awkwardly. Before she can react, a warm hand pulls her directly into his embrace. Laetitia can't help but laugh. This is truly awkward. A deep voice suddenly sounds in her ear. Roland invites her to bathe with him. Laetitia springs up from the bed in embarrassment, repeatedly saying no need. Rejected, Roland can only comfort her that it's fine. Laetitia can't help but think that if she were facing Cyrano, perhaps she wouldn't be this awkward. Why did she suddenly think of him? She snaps back to awareness, annoyed at herself for the thought. Roland asks with anticipation if she'll come again tonight. Seeing Laetitia doesn't answer, sadness appears in Roland's eyes as he asks if she doesn't want to come. Laetitia awkwardly declines, saying she'll probably be very busy, before fully consolidating her imperial power. Laetitia doesn't want any heirs, nor does she want to favor anyone. Hearing the word probably, Roland keenly perceives her subtext. He asks disappointedly if she's hoping to be very busy. Seeing Laetitia's guilty expression, he understands. She doesn't really want to come. The atmosphere instantly falls into silence. After Laetitia leaves, Colton hurries to flatter him, saying he's different from the others. The other harem members can't compare to him. 2 of them are commoners, their status nowhere near as noble as his. The other noble moves slowly and doesn't seem enthusiastic about her majesty, and Prince Kael isn't even worth mentioning. He can't compare to our young master. As he finishes speaking, Kael suddenly appears, warning him not to be smug just because he received one night's favor. He mocks Roland, saying he only needs to look in a mirror to know that this kind of face gets boring quickly. Unexpectedly, Roland doesn't even lift his eyelids and walks straight past him. Colton can't help but chase after him, asking why he didn't counter Kael's provocation. Is he just going to let Kael say such outrageous things? He's always been eloquent and never willing to suffer the slightest loss. Seeing Roland remain silent, he urgently urges him to speak. Roland stops in his tracks, and everything that happened last night echoes in his mind. He only feels a wave of humiliation and unconsciously bites his lower lip. Roland turns around, and before Colton can react, he backs Colton into a corner. He forces Colton to look directly at his face. Colton is extremely nervous, not understanding what the young master is doing. Roland asks him seriously how it feels. Colton doesn't understand what he means. Roland patiently repeats, asking how he feels looking at him from this angle. Colton admits honestly that his heartbeat accelerates uncontrollably. Up close, he's really handsome. So handsome it makes one feel the urge to kiss him. A surprised voice comes from the side. Tristan exclaims that this is a fake marriage drama, or forbidden love. Hearing this, Roland stares coldly at Tristan, shielding Colton behind him. Colton glimpses the sinister smile on Tristan's face, and is instantly frightened stiff. After teasing the two, Tristan smirks and says he has business and leaves first. Roland stands in place, his mind a complete mess. The oppressive aura emanating around them frightens Colton, who hurries to explain to Roland that it's not his fault. He was just standing there obediently and didn't do anything improper. Roland looks at him silently for a moment, then turns and leaves without another word. Colton hurries after him, reassuring him that he's really very handsome. So handsome it makes people want to kiss him involuntarily. That's the normal reaction. This only confuses Roland more. Last night when he tried to go further, Her Majesty interrupted him. Laetitia pushed him away, saying she was a bit tired and would just go to sleep. With that, she turned to the other side of the bed, closed her eyes, and slept. Roland falls into self-doubt. He doesn't understand why she could sleep so peacefully with him beside her. Colton didn't hear clearly, and asks what he said. He says dejectedly that he and Her Majesty indeed didn't progress to the final step. Colton asks what exactly he did last night, and he simply says they slept. He only held Laetitia and slept through the night. Colton doesn't understand. He clearly studied the specialized knowledge seriously, so how did it turn out like this? Roland is extremely frustrated, saying Her Majesty has absolutely no interest in those things. Colton can't help but sigh. On the very first day, Her Majesty deflated the young master with his strong pride. He continues consoling him, thinking Her Majesty was perhaps just too tired. Anyone would have just slept. That Her Majesty sought out Roland first already shows her feelings. This restraint is actually proof of favoritism, not treating him as an outlet. The guard captain reminds Laetitia that sending a gift to the first harem member to receive favor is established protocol. Laetitia thinks to herself that the night with Roland wasn't truly a first night, but if word got out, it would probably embarrass Roland. After making up her mind, she instructs the guard captain to be sure to prepare a gift for Roland. Watching the guard captain leave happily, Laetitia reflects that he seems to favor Roland the most. Could it be because Roland is the son of a meritorious official? Laetitia gently pushes open the door and sees Gavin sitting by the window reading. She can't help but laugh softly, teasing that even on a day like this, he's still buried in books. Hearing Her Majesty's voice, Gavin instantly panics and becomes flustered. Watching his flustered appearance, Laetitia sits down beside him, joking that he doesn't need to run away now. Gavin stubbornly argues he's never run away, but Laetitia calls him out, saying she's seen him deliberately avoid her several times. Gavin guiltily hides his face behind his book. Left speechless, he can only nod helplessly in admission. Laetitia asks with concern if he was disappointed that she didn't visit him yesterday. Seeing his silent demeanor, she knows it's an admission. He does feel bad about it. She wanted to tease him, but couldn't bear to see him cry, and can't help but reflect that his nature hasn't changed over all these years. Gavin carefully asks if she dislikes him being this way, and Laetitia responds gently that she's always found him adorable since childhood. His cheeks flush as he praises Laetitia for always being cool, and Laetitia takes the opportunity to tease. "So that's why you like me?" Seeing he's about to cry again from her teasing, Laetitia quickly comforts him. She says worriedly that seeing Gavin like this always makes her unable to relax. Laetitia instructs Gavin that if he's bullied by other harem members, he absolutely shouldn't endure it. He can cry but must tell her. Gavin is somewhat confused. Who would bully him? Laetitia says frankly that the other harem members don't seem to have good temperaments. He quickly denies it, saying everyone is very friendly with no conflicts. In fact, he hasn't spoken a single word to the other harem members yet. Laetitia comforts him, saying after talking to them he'll know their true natures, and no matter what happens, he must tell her. Seeing Gavin doesn't respond for a while, she presses him on why he's not answering. But Gavin takes the initiative and grasps her hand. He mumbles, asking why Your Majesty is specifically telling him all this. Laetitia didn't hear clearly and looks at him with a puzzled expression. Gavin asks Laetitia in confusion why she came specifically to tell him all this. Laetitia's heart trembles. Does he still have feelings for her? Otherwise, why would he look at her with those eyes? That straightforward and pure gaze makes even lying feel difficult for her. She explains with difficulty that she sees him always staying in his room, which isn't good for his health. Then she asks Gavin if he wants to take a walk with her. Meanwhile, on the palace path, Tristan is wandering casually, unable to help remarking how spacious the palace truly is. Cyrus is extremely anxious, complaining that Tristan is too leisurely, either wandering around or teasing other harem members. But Tristan laughs carelessly, saying life is boring and he should find some amusement. Cyrus is both angry and anxious, reminding him he's not here for amusement, but to win the Empress's favor. This is Ambrose Trading Company's last chance, and he seriously reminds him to take this seriously. The guild leader with 3 daughters was previously confident he'd make his daughters the crown princess's harem, but the throne changed hands, and his daughter's attempt to help Thales take power failed. Thinking of the guild leader's initial confidence and current disheartened state make Cyrus even more anxious. He reminds Tristan once more to seize the opportunity well, but Tristan spreads his hands helplessly. Her Majesty hasn't sought him out at all. Cyrus urges him to dress up properly, even applying lotion around the eyes to improve his complexion. Tristan raises his index finger to Cyrus's lips. He suddenly shushes, signaling Cyrus to be quiet. Cyrus is shocked. It's Her Majesty the Empress. He asks in confusion if they shouldn't greet her at a time like this. Why hide here? But Tristan holds him back, telling him to have more patience and not be impulsive. From the corner of his eye, he glimpses the two people not far away. Cyrus wonders, isn't that the Prime Minister's son, Gavin? At yesterday's banquet, he kept staring at the table, so they thought he'd be the easiest harem member to handle. They thought he was a docile puppy, easy to handle, but he turned out to be a scheming cat with hidden agendas. He wonders to himself what Gavin is plotting. Seeing the smile on Tristan's face, Cyrus instantly feels a chill down his spine. Every time Tristan shows this expression, nothing good happens. Tristan suddenly declares it's time to make Her Majesty notice him. He thought Gavin was the most docile and let his guard down. Didn't expect Her Majesty would fall for this type. Cyrus nervously asks what he plans to do, and Tristan first promises he'll dress up properly, just as he breathes a sigh of relief. Tristan adds that after dressing up, he'll investigate the Empress's past. Cyrus looks stunned. Tristan explains he needs to know what type Her Majesty likes first. Cyrus has an epiphany and asks how he'll investigate. Tristan decides with a smile to investigate Her Majesty's first love, though they've broken up. He can infer her preferences through him. As long as he knows who it is, he can adjust his strategy to cater to her tastes. Cyrus immediately praises him admiringly. He's so clever. Being a harem member really does require using your brain. As they talk, they prepare to return to formulate a detailed plan. Meanwhile, at his quarters, Kyle is full of expectation, convinced Laetitia will come find him. He scoffs, though for political reasons the first night went to someone else. The one she loves is still him. Just then, a servant hurries over to report that Her Majesty won't be coming to the harem at all today. Kyle instantly freezes in place. On the other side, Laetitia has just finished handling official business, and turning her head sees that it's already dawn. With only 3 hours left until she needs to wake up, she hurries to lie down and sleep. Before long, before she's fully rested, the nanny wakes her. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she learns that Roland has come requesting an audience. Laetitia is somewhat puzzled, not understanding why Roland would suddenly come looking for her. Roland says he received Laetitia's gift and asks why she sent him a gift. Laetitia is taken aback by the question and asks in return if the head steward didn't explain, but Roland's expression is serious as he says they didn't have relations that night, and Laetitia asks in surprise if he thinks she shouldn't have sent him a gift. Roland nods and even tries to return it. She immediately refuses, saying bluntly that regardless of how the first night was spent, he's her man. It's just sending a gift to her own man. If he doesn't like that reason, then consider it commemorating holding hands while sleeping. Roland gathers his courage and asks if she shouldn't give her heart before sending gifts. Laetitia decisively refuses. Roland then says he wants to entrust his heart to her first. Laetitia is amused, teasing that his expression looks like he's about to throw a punch. Seeing Roland's embarrassment, she quickly waves her hand, saying she's just joking. Laetitia gently reminds him that they've met fewer than 5 times, but he'll be her man for life, so why rush things? After Roland leaves, she can't help but complain that his inability to let down his guard makes him like an impregnable fortress. Laetitia notices Simon's smile and asks curiously if he has good news. Simon nods with a smile. He does indeed. Laetitia becomes interested and tells him to share this joy, but Simon just smiles secretly, without revealing the answer. Laetitia pursues the question curiously, asking Simon why he's so happy. Simon chuckles softly but refuses to tell her. Laetitia can't help but protest that he's being too much. Simon quickly appeases her, explaining that it's a secret treasure deep in his heart and can't be casually revealed. Laetitia feels helpless, but can only let it go. She shifts to asking about the letter investigation progress, wanting to know if there's been any breakthrough. Simon admits frankly that he's handling it alone, and with such a heavy workload, progress naturally can't be fast. Laetitia feels secretly guilty that this task requires so much manpower, yet she's left him to shoulder it alone and offers to help. Simon suddenly teases, saying that just seeing her smile would be enough. Laetitia asks in confusion who she should smile at. Getting Simon's response of "at me," she giggles and tells him to stop fooling around, urging him to say what help he actually needs. Laetitia says frankly not to hold back, as finishing the investigation early benefits her too, but Simon seriously denies he was joking. Simon states his request, asking her to provide information on the 321 letters received in Meridian City. He requests that, excluding confidential and private documents, she write down the sender and purpose of each letter. He wants to compare this information with the administrator's letter registry. Over 300 letters. Laetitia sighs at the heavy workload, but compared to Simon's, it's not much. She carefully reviews everything, repeatedly confirming she hasn't missed anything important. Exhausted, moment, she pulls open a drawer, and Kane's application form comes prominently into view. She can't help but marvel at his good looks, wondering how she'd never heard of such a handsome mercenary king before. Aside from meeting him once during the signing, she hasn't seen him since, and right now she's not in the mood to work anyway. Staring at the application form, an idea strikes Laetitia, and she decides to go find him immediately. On the way, she passes by the lake, and memories with Cyrano suddenly flood her mind. Back then, she and Cyrano played by the lake and got scolded severely by the head butler. Those warm memories fill her with melancholy. She scolds herself inwardly. Why is she still clinging to the past at a time like this? She pats her own face, forcibly snapping herself back to reality. Just as she reaches the harem entrance, she sees Kane already waiting there. Laetitia is surprised that he would specifically come to greet her. Feeling a trace of astonishment, she awkwardly takes the initiative to greet him, but Kane remains silent, not saying a word. Laetitia walks to the room and removes her cloak. Before she can react, Kane swiftly appears beside her. Staring at his face up close, Laetitia marvels that his portrait doesn't capture even a tenth of how handsome he is in person. She hesitates over how to start a conversation when Kane breaks the silence first. He calls her master, saying he's been waiting for her all along. Laetitia feels awkward. This is too sudden. Why is he calling her master? Kane's closeness makes her instinctively shudder. She doesn't understand why. This person's aura feels so cold. Laetitia asks curiously, "It's only been 2 days. How could that be a very long time?" She can't help but press further. Has it been more than 2 days since they parted? But Kane indicates it's been far longer than 2 days. Laetitia guesses, could it be since he submitted the application? But Kane says it's even earlier than that. Growing more curious, she asks if Kane knew her before. With such outstanding looks, she certainly wouldn't forget if she'd seen him, and she has no memory of seeing him masked either. But Kane says he's known her since she was born. Laetitia pauses and then realizes that as the legitimate princess, her reputation is well known, so it's normal for citizens and even foreigners to know of her. She can't help but feel shy. It seems he's been waiting to marry her for a long time. Kane plants a kiss on her collarbone, and Laetitia's heart fills with shock. How can he be so forward? She hurriedly pushes Kane away, telling him to wait. Kane doesn't understand, asking Laetitia why she keeps being so evasive. Laetitia doesn't know how to explain, and can only ask why he keeps calling her master, but Kane insists that's what she is. She tells him to call her Your Majesty instead, but Kane asks if he really must change it, as he prefers master. Laetitia firmly insists again that he must address her as Your Majesty. Kane falls silent for a moment. The next second, he suddenly rushes forward, their heads nearly touching. Kane takes a step back, a smile playing on his lips. However, Kane actually reaches out to unfasten her clothes, and Laetitia immediately stops him. At Laetitia's command to stop, Kane immediately halts. He obediently crouches down in front of her. Laetitia sighs. This guy is like an untamed wolf. Catching her off guard, Kane bites her finger. Laetitia is both angry and bewildered, loudly demanding to know why he's biting her finger. The next second, he lowers his head and licks it, the gesture so suggestive it's overwhelming. Face flushed red, Laetitia grumbles, "How can someone be so perverted?" Before she can react, he leans in again and kisses her arm, taking advantage of her distraction. Kane suddenly pushes her down, and Laetitia instantly tenses up. Seeing that he's about to go further, she urgently calls for him to stop. Looking at his handsome face so close, she can't help but swallow nervously. Then she coldly orders him to get off. Kane's eyes show disappointment, but he quickly obeys. Laetitia turns over and lies on the other side of the bed, away from Kane, the atmosphere in the room becoming particularly delicate. Laetitia then takes her cloak and draws a dividing line, sternly warning him not to cross it. Kane looks aggrieved, asking if she didn't come here to sleep with him. Laetitia emphasizes that she's only here to sleep, and she'll remember exactly where the dividing line is. Kane looks puzzled. Does she have bad sleeping habits? Laetitia immediately denies it, saying she lies perfectly still and never moves around. She warns him very seriously that she'll notice if the line is disturbed, and threatens him not to try any tricks. After she finishes speaking, Kane obediently turns around without any intention of resisting. The next day, Laetitia opens her eyes with immediate vigilance. Her first action is to check the line in the middle of the bed. Kane chuckles in disbelief, saying he never touched the line at all. Laetitia breathes a sigh of relief, praising him for being fairly obedient this time. Seeing the smile hiding at the corner of his mouth, Laetitia asks what he's smiling about, but Kane stubbornly says it's nothing. Laetitia complains that he's clearly smirking but refuses to admit it. She gets up, preparing to leave. Kane quickly follows, offering to help fasten her cloak. He carefully instructs Laetitia that the cloak should be fastened this way so it won't slip off. Laetitia mutters to herself that he becomes normal once daylight comes, and can't help but inwardly admire his slender fingers. Her gaze moves to his eyelashes, still finding them beautiful, and Kane softly asks if she likes them. Laetitia nods honestly. They really are beautiful. He happily boasts that he's good at anything that requires using his hands. Laetitia reflects inwardly that she feels like she's just a guest here. She softly calls out Kane's name. Kane immediately responds respectfully with Master. Laetitia brings up what he said about waiting for her for a long time, wanting to know when he first knew her. Kane gives an absurd answer, saying before she was born. Laetitia leaves speechless, thinking he's truly a strange person. She grumbles that he insists on calling her master and only says strange things that don't answer her questions. Yet inwardly she must admit he's more attractive than she imagined. Suddenly an urgent voice calls from behind, shouting for your majesty to wait. Letitia turns around to see it's actually Kyle. She asks in confusion what matter he needs her for. Kyle is emotional, demanding to know if she won't be satisfied until she's toyed with him. He admits frankly that she's successfully made him jealous. This much he concedes. He says that now his mind is filled with her image, impossible to shake off. Surely she must be satisfied now. Letitia thinks to herself that although he's crazy, his appearance is quite good. She softly calls out Kyle's name, and he immediately responds. Letitia says frankly that she finds him very mysterious and can't figure him out. She even jokes that she wants to crawl into his head to see what he's thinking. Kyle instantly blushes, saying her words are too lewd and explicit. Letitia looks completely confused. How is that lewd? She turns to instruct the head butler to send gifts to Kane and Kyle. The head butler is somewhat puzzled, asking if Prince Kale needs one too. Letitia explains it's because he looks quite dejected. The head butler raises an objection that the other harem members feel the same way, but Letitia counters that Kyle came from afar and has a noble status. Although she suspected him of being a spy sent by Cyrano, at least for the sake of his background, she needs to give him face. She adds that the head butler should investigate Kane's past. The butler immediately asks if there's something suspicious. Letitia hesitates for a moment, then admits frankly there really isn't. The head butler respectfully accepts the order, saying he'll investigate carefully. Watching his retreating figure, Letitia feels he seems to be taking this matter too seriously. She quickly puts it out of mind. Even if it's a misunderstanding, what does it matter? Just as she's preparing to bathe and relax, someone rushes in to report that someone has vandalized the deceased palace with graffiti. The deceased palace appears as an elegant garden complex, but beneath it lie the remains of past emperors and empresses. How dare someone defile the late emperor's tomb? Letitia stares at the graffiti on the wall, burning with rage. She demands to know when the graffiti appeared. The soldier answers it was discovered during the 6 o'clock morning shift change. Letitia asks if there was anyone during the shift change. The guard lowers his head and admits there were about 7 minutes with no one on duty. She sternly questions the previous guard on duty, not expecting to find it was actually Anrin standing before her. She asks if he saw the graffiti during his watch or noticed any suspicious persons. The guard shakes his head repeatedly in denial. Is it possible to carry paint materials, create graffiti, and escape all within 7 minutes? Letitia angrily rebukes them. How could such obvious activity go unnoticed? Is it negligence or concealment? She takes a deep breath to compose herself. She summons Knight Commander, Simon, and orders him to identify all relevant personnel. Simon bows and accepts the order. Letitia grits her teeth. How dare they insult the royal family like this? There will be severe punishment. Returning to her office, Letitia emphasizes that this is a grave disrespect to the late emperor and must be handled seriously. She turns to the guard captain, asking for his opinion on the case. Could this matter be related to the murderer who killed the late emperor? The guard captain hesitates for a moment before finally voicing his suspicions. He's seen the pattern drawn in black paint before by chance, but isn't quite certain. The pattern appears to be the exclusive mark of a certain assassination organization. Letitia demands to know which organization. The guard captain utters 2 words: Shadow Guard. Simon also knows of this organization, which surprises Letitia slightly. He explains that Shadow Guard claims to be somewhat famous, but in reality they're just boasting. It's normal not to have heard of them, but Shadow Guard's methods are decent, and they always leave their mark after completing a commission to show off. With the mark appearing in the late emperor's tomb, Letitia can't help but suspect. Could they have killed the late emperor? But soon she becomes uncertain. If it really was them, why wait so long to leave their mark? She quickly reaches a conclusion. It could be them or it could not be. The mark isn't complex. Anyone could imitate it. Simon's thoughts align with Letitia's. She asks Simon if there have been cases of people faking Shadow Guard's mark in the past. She reflects that, if Shadow Guard leaves their mark, they must have strong pride and detest being impersonated. Imposters get hunted down by them, with the reversed mark left on their corpses as a warning. A gleam flashes in Letitia's eyes as she immediately forms a strategy. She tells the guard captain to secretly pursue Shadow Guard while publicly announcing the case details. The guard captain and Simon exchange confused glances, completely unsure what she means. Letitia explains helplessly that if it wasn't Shadow Guard's doing, they'll prove themselves innocent. Then a corpse with the reversed mark will appear, and they can catch the culprit through that. As a precaution, Letitia orders increased security throughout the palace. The guards acknowledge the order in unison and quickly deploy. After everyone leaves, Letitia lets her emotions show in front of Simon. She's furious. If the late emperor truly was assassinated by Shadow Guard, someone must have orchestrated it. She asks Simon who he thinks is most suspicious. Simon shakes his head, indicating he hasn't found anything yet. Letitia just feels a headache coming on. Assassins don't break under torture, so if it really was Shadow Guard, this will be difficult. She suddenly remembers a strange letter of unknown origin. The letter was found outside the walls of the deceased palace, still within the palace grounds. The culprit could precisely exploit the 7-minute gap to disappear completely. Could there be a spy among the guards? This possibility alarms her. She hurriedly opens the letter, hoping to find clues. Opening the letter and glancing at it, Letitia curses angrily. "Lunatic!" Simon curiously asks about the contents. After reading it, his eyes widen with fury. The letter actually slanders Letitia, claiming she killed the late emperor. It's completely twisting the truth. Simon grinds his teeth in anger, wishing he could cut down the letter writer. Letitia thinks calmly. The letter writer doesn't seem to be the same person as the graffiti vandal. If the graffiti and letter came from the same person, the logic doesn't make sense at all. Someone who likes to show off wouldn't resort to such petty tricks. Why would they anonymously slander? The two seem unrelated yet coincidentally suspicious. But with no other leads currently, Letitia has no choice but to have Simon investigate both angles. Letitia sees through his hesitation and asks if he has something to say. Simon's eyes are full of concern, saying directly that she's been cooped up at her desk lately. Letitia sighs helplessly, admitting frankly that she's been really too busy recently. She points to the large stack of documents on the desk, full of exhaustion. Simon says sympathetically that the morning's incident must have added considerable stress, and suggests she move her body and practice some martial arts. As long as she's willing, he can accompany her in training anytime. She calculates carefully. She was supposed to attend a briefing at 9, but it's already past time. Even if she leaves now, she won't arrive until 10. Too rushed. There's still a state council meeting at 11. After brief consideration, Letitia nods in agreement. Even the wind at the training grounds carries a passionate energy, both of them radiating intense readiness. They exchange moves back and forth for several rounds. The knights cheer and applaud enthusiastically for them both. Quite a lively scene. Initially, they're evenly matched, and Letitia can still hold her own. But the next second, Letitia makes one careless move. The sword actually flies right out of her hand. She grits her teeth and curses under her breath. Damn it! Her eyes full of unwillingness. Simon sheathes his sword and stands, asking with a hint of amusement in his tone, "Does this mean I win?" Letitia purses her lips, saying, "When has he ever not won a match?" Simon laughs and says he's someone who makes his living by the sword. "If I lost to your majesty, I'd have no right to be knight commander." Letitia sheathes her sword, sincerely remarking it's been so long since she moved like this. Her whole body feels refreshed. She sighs inwardly. Simon always quietly relieves her stress in this way. Should I properly thank him? Watching the changing expressions on her face, Simon's lips curl into a knowing smile. He deliberately speaks up, saying, "Your Majesty looked very strange just now." Letitia's heart tightens, and she tries to appear calm while asking what was strange about her. Simon speaks bluntly, saying she looked like she had something to say but swallowed it back. Letitia hastily denies having anything she wanted to say. Simon persists, saying she wanted to say something nice to him but didn't speak it aloud. Letitia denies it awkwardly, and Simon smilingly hands her a handkerchief. She instinctively takes the handkerchief and wipes her sweat. The more she wipes, the more puzzled she becomes. She clearly had it on her during the sparring, so how is the handkerchief still so dry and cool? She can't help but mutter that it's really strange. Simon's tone is amused, teasing that although he doesn't understand what she finds strange, he thinks it's stranger that she's rubbing his handkerchief against her cheeks. Simon teases her, saying, "Please do that where he can't see next time." Letitia blushes to her ears, explaining it's not at all what he thinks. Simon suppresses his laughter, saying he wanted to pretend he didn't see, but there are too many witnesses. Letitia stubbornly denies it and asks a nearby knight if he saw anything. The knight frantically shakes his head and shouts, "No." Simon looks somewhat displeased. He remarks sarcastically that the knight has followed him longer than he's followed your majesty. Letitia is amused by this reaction and laughs heartily. Simon lets out a soft hum, his gaze sweeping the surroundings. He says it seems there are witnesses elsewhere too. Letitia follows his gaze and greets them with a smile. Roland remains expressionless and gives a stiff bow. Then he turns and walks away. Colton quickly chases after him, calling out for the young master to wait. He asks quietly if Roland is very concerned about that knight. He introduces him as Simon, the Royal Guard Knight Commander, who has excellent swordsmanship. Roland can't shake from his mind the image of Letitia laughing and talking with Simon. A terrible thought emerges. Is Her Majesty unswayed by temptation because of that knight? Colton is confused, not understanding what he means. Roland says slowly that Simon was Prince Leonard's friend, and the late emperor favored him. Therefore, he naturally became Her Majesty Letitia's most trusted confidant. Colton nods, praising Simon's exceptional swordsmanship. Roland says nothing, lost lost in thought. Colton wonders to himself, could the young master be jealous of Knight Commander Simon? While lost in thought, Roland encounters Gavin head-on. Gavin is about to greet him, but Roland walks right past him. Colton quickly turns to apologize. Gavin freezes in place, looking displeased. Thalis watches him and can't help but offer comfort, saying Lord Gavin shouldn't be sad. Her Majesty is very kind to you, and your family backgrounds are comparable. You don't need to be so timid every time you meet. Gavin shakes his head bitterly. Although Her Majesty is kind, we only met last time in the library. I'm actually quite confused too. Thalis catches on and says with a smile, you're talking about bedroom matters, aren't you? Gavin, both embarrassed and flustered, shouts, Ah, Thales! The next second, a voice warns them to be careful with their words. Suddenly, a stone strikes the sword Thales is trying to draw. Shortly after, Laetitia gathers the harem, bringing up the matter of Gavin being inexplicably injured by a flying stone. This matter has already spread. Everyone must know about it. The head butler reports they didn't catch the culprit because Gavin's attendant worried he might be attacked. Again, didn't dare chase the assailant. Letitia is puzzled. Wouldn't it have been fine for Gavin to chase along? The head butler awkwardly indicates that Gavin said he's not good at running. Letitia says frankly she doesn't expect them to get along harmoniously, but absolutely won't allow any more violent incidents. Seeing Kyle looking unhappy, Letitia can't help but suspect, could this crazy person have done it? The next second, Kyle suddenly grins foolishly and makes a heart gesture toward Letitia. She immediately chuckles in disbelief, overturning her previous suspicion. Letitia quickly becomes serious again, warning all harem members that if another incident occurs and the culprit isn't found, there will be collective punishment. She reminds everyone not to underestimate it just because the harem is shaped like a donut. At this, Cyrus bursts out laughing. Running 100 laps as punishment will be enough to make everyone stop finding it cute. Tristan can't help but grumble. Is this harem a mercenary company or a knight order? What's with suddenly talking about collective punishment? Cyrus agrees, saying Her Majesty clearly grew up among knights. Tristan jokes, will married couples settle arguments by drawing swords? Cyrus teases back, how could anyone quarrel with Her Majesty? Tristan seriously explains it's quite normal. Hearing this, Cyrus mocks. You have to become a married couple first to have the right to quarrel. Tristan ignores this and asks about progress on Her Majesty's first love investigation. Cyrus looks troubled, saying the person's special status makes it hard to get concrete information. Tristan immediately guesses, could Her Majesty's first love be a king from another country? After receiving confirmation, Tristan thinks for a moment and immediately concludes it's Cyrano of the Khalid Empire. Cyrus is surprised, curious how he guessed so accurately. Tristan explains that the harem selections reveal Her Majesty's preferences. She doesn't like large age gaps and values appearance. If he were unmarried, she'd propose a state marriage. Summoning a harem indicates he's married, plus Cyrano studied here before. Cyrus feels dejected that this makes him look bad after investigating so long. Tristan comforts him, saying it was all thanks to his clues. Having said this, he immediately follows up by asking if the specific details of their romance can be uncovered. Cyrus indicates helplessly that the details can't be confirmed yet. Tristan ponders what Cyrano's character is really like. He himself had previously traveled to the Khalid Empire on business. Cyrano is handsome with a pleasant voice. Based on this, Tristan speculates his personality isn't bad. Cyrus asks if he plans to imitate him. Tristan immediately denies it. A first love who became a married man certainly didn't part peacefully. He worries that imitation might backfire and displease Her Majesty. More importantly, Cyrano is hard to approach, making it difficult to understand his character. Cyrus immediately says he'll do his best to help, following the guildmaster's instructions. As soon as he finishes speaking, Tristan changes his mind. He decides to investigate, personally after all. Kyle is still savoring the joy of just greeting Laetitia when Tristan actively approaches him. He greets him with a smile, making conversation. He says he's wanted to chat with him for a while and has finally found the opportunity. But Kyle is indifferent, saying he has no interest in extensive conversation. Tristan isn't discouraged, only saying they'll continue living together in the future and should talk. The attendant marvels inwardly that Tristan's presence rivals his own lord's. Kyle asks impatiently what he wants to say. Tristan asks, curious why he gave up being a royal consort to come to Her Majesty's harem. Kyle asks displeasedly if he has an opinion. Tristan explains he's just curious since Kyle had better options. Kyle says shyly that Her Majesty has secretly loved him for years and only used this method because he didn't accept. Tristan clearly doesn't believe it. He asks, is that really true? Kyle responds haughtily that he must hope it's false, given his disbelieving expression. Tristan immediately fawns, saying that's not what he meant, while knowing inwardly that Kyle doesn't know about his brother's situation. Kyle notices the odd look and asks why he's looking at him that way. Tristan quickly makes an excuse, saying he feels inexplicably sad seeing him. Kyle is blunt, complaining that he has a talent for annoying people. Tristan admits it with a smile and smoothly brings up his imperial brother. Kyle looks confused, not understanding the connection. Tristan explains it's because the trading company frequently does business with the Khalid Empire, and he wants to understand Cyrano's temperament. Kyle says frankly that his imperial brother is extremely ambitious, never lets go of what he's set his sights on, and is a complete chain smoker. This answer surprises Tristan quite a bit. He didn't expect that. Kyle smiles smugly, although he doesn't know what Tristan's intentions are in circling around him. If he's useful to his imperial brother, he'll find him himself. The implication is that Tristan doesn't need to go to such trouble investigating. Meanwhile, Cyrano of the Khalid Empire waits for the messenger. He discovers that Kyle hasn't sent a letter again today. Cyrano mutters in a low voice that this younger brother is truly useless. Unable to receive Kyle's letters, Cyrano anxiously hopes Adrian will reach the Vestria Empire quickly. Scenes of past moments with Laetitia flood uncontrollably into his mind. Back then, he had whimsically proposed playing a game where whoever closed their eyes first would lose. While Laetitia focused intently on the game, Cyrano turned sideways and gazed at her affectionately. The next second, he deliberately stole a kiss from Laetitia. Seeing her blinking repeatedly in embarrassment, Cyrano triumphantly kept saying she closed her eyes. Laetitia bashfully scolded Cyrano for being too underhanded. Seeing her puffed up in anger, he couldn't help but kiss her to appease her. Those sweet times are all the more nostalgic when recalled now. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and Cyrano pulls himself away from past emotions. He says in a deep voice, "Enter." Chief Advisor Victor hurriedly visits, saying the results of the letter investigation he mentioned earlier are out. Victor's tone is grave. All the letters were intact when sent, but half never left the Khalid Empire. The investigation confirms that the one intercepting the letters was Duke Drake, or someone acting on his orders. Even if Drake isn't the mastermind, he must be the one seizing them. This has been repeatedly confirmed, with the person in charge of managing gifts. Cyrano murmurs Duke Drake's name, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Since he ascended to the throne, Duke Drake has been secretly monitoring him. Though his power has grown, Drake still refuses to acknowledge Elena as the Khalid Empire's Empress. He knows well that Drake will try to kill him once Elena bears an heir. Elena has never been his wife. She's merely Duke Drake's daughter. Victor asks quietly how Your Majesty plans to handle this matter. Cyrano decides to gather intelligence first and send everything together later. He also instructs Victor to bring writing paper. He wants to write to Laetitia. In the letter, he informs Laetitia that half the letters were intercepted in the Khalid Empire, while the other half may have been lost in the Vestria Empire. He urges her to be extremely vigilant. He reminds Victor to avoid the correspondence office and find a trustworthy person to deliver the letter personally. He suggests mimicking last time by disguising as a marriage delegation to convey the message. Victor respectfully agrees. On the other side, Laetitia wakes from sleep. Gavin beside her sleeps peacefully. She recalls when he asked earlier if she remembered what she said before. Gavin had lowered his head and said if someone bullied him, he should tell her. Laetitia instructed him to definitely remember what she said. She would protect him. Thinking of this, she pokes his face gently with some affection, then tenderly pats his head. She then rises gently, afraid of disturbing the sleeping Gavin. As soon as she steps out the door, she sees Kyle already waiting outside. She asks, somewhat puzzled why he's not in his room so early. Kyle says he's been waiting for her. Laetitia is slightly surprised and teases that he's completely different from his brother. She asks curiously how long he's been waiting. Kyle stubbornly says he hasn't waited long. Laetitia feels somewhat awkward and smoothly invites him to go to the dining hall for breakfast together. The dining hall attendants see this scene and marvel inwardly that the Mad Prince has finally appeared. During the meal, Laetitia can't help but admire inwardly that although he's a bit mad, his princely bearing is indeed quite different from others. After finishing the meal, Laetitia takes the initiative to call Kyle's name. Kyle responds respectfully. Laetitia asks curiously if he knows who threw the stones a few days ago. Kyle says indifferently that he doesn't care about others' affairs. Laetitia secretly smiles. Although he's mad, he's quite interesting. Laetitia reminds him with concern that he might be the culprit's next target. Does he not care about that either? Kyle nods and declares confidently that he's not that fragile. If attacked, he'll protect himself. Kyle then politely thanks her for her concern. Laetitia sighs. She's not actually especially worried. Before she finishes speaking, Kyle asks about the late Emperor's tomb incident. He asks if there's been progress on the investigation into the shadow guard mark on the tomb. Laetitia responds truthfully that the investigation is still ongoing. She curiously asks Kyle in return why he's interested in this matter. Kyle's gaze is firm as he states directly that he doesn't believe the culprit is Shadow Guard. Laetitia asks in confusion why he thinks the culprit isn't Shadow Guard. Kyle Kyle reveals the key point. His Majesty Cyrano once commissioned Shadow Guard but was refused. Letitia's pupils contract sharply as she asks who he wanted to assassinate. Kyle answers it was Prince Hector. Shadow Guard's reason for refusal was clear. They didn't want any involvement with royalty. Letitia instinctively blurts out, "Wow." Kyle raises an eyebrow asking what she's marveling at. Letitia explains she's just surprised he's answering seriously. She quickly adds that she's not calling him stupid. She's truly grateful he's been a huge help. After processing Kyle's testimony, Letitia becomes more convinced Shadow Guard is being framed. But why Shadow Guard? Having unexpectedly obtained a key clue, Letitia immediately summons Tristan and Kane. She wants to hear these two well-informed individuals' opinions, as it concerns solving the case. Letitia asks if they've heard about the deceased palace incident. Tristan and Kane respond that they've heard something. Letitia says frankly that one is a famous mercenary and the other a merchant, both with extensive networks. They must have had some dealings with organizations like Shadow Guard. Kane speaks first, admitting he's taken commissions related to Shadow Guard. She immediately asks if he's met them. Kane looks troubled, admitting frankly that the mission was only half successful. The other half were still killed. Letitia presses for details. Kane indicates the specific details aren't convenient for him to reveal. Tristan on the side lets out a mocking laugh, saying softly that at least Kane survived. Tristan explains there's a rumor that if anyone harms one Shadow Guard member, they'll face retaliation from 100. She's somewhat shocked and asks if this claim is true. Kane falls silent, neither confirming nor denying. Letitia intensifies her tone, pressing Kane again about the truth of the rumor. She reminds Kane that she, the Empress, is still present. Kane hesitates for a moment, and finally only says he's not too clear about it. Letitia helplessly gives up questioning, so even Kane doesn't know. The next moment she directs her questioning at Tristan, curious how he knows this rumor. Tristan is still speaking in a sarcastic tone, saying Kane is really impressive. She asks directly. Tristan seems to know particularly much about Shadow Guard. She questions whether he's had contact with them. Tristan pauses for a moment. He admits frankly that Shadow Guard is actually a service organization he operates. Letitia instantly becomes alert, her hand on her sword hilt as she draws it and points it at him. Tristan frantically waves his hands in alarm, begging Your Majesty to hear his explanation first. Letitia glares furiously. How would a merchant operate an assassination organization? She says bluntly he's actually a drug dealer. Tristan hastily defends himself, denying the drug dealing accusation. He claims Shadow Guard is a legitimate organization approved by the late emperor. Letitia looks completely shocked. Shadow Guard has been approved by emperors through the generations, since the first emperor. Shadow Guard has been a secret imperial force. Letitia is completely confused. Why has she never heard of this? Tristan states directly that Shadow Guard absolutely cannot be the culprit in this case. Usually the royal family arranges for the Shadow Guard leader to meet the new emperor upon abdication or when making a will. This secret is only known to the successor, for the sake of secrecy. Tristan admits that Shadow Guard specializes in matters the royal family cannot legally accomplish. Letitia asks what kind of matters. Those that can't be resolved through law. He gives an example: some serious criminals harm the nation but destroy evidence first, beyond the law's reach. Letitia asks why the outside world considers Shadow Guard an assassination organization. Tristan admits it's to divert attention. They leave their mark during assassinations precisely to conceal their true purpose, making people think Shadow Guard only does assassinations, and other things aren't their doing. Tristan proactively offers to present documentation bearing the imperial seal as proof. The seal is imbued with the Grand Sage's divine power and absolutely cannot be forged. Letitia demands to know why he didn't explain during the coronation, but instead approached her this way. Tristan looks troubled, admitting the answer will displease Her Majesty. Letitia sternly urges him to speak frankly. Tristan reveals the truth. From our position, we couldn't trust you. After all, Letitia is one of the suspects in the late emperor's murder. As he finishes speaking, he frantically begs for mercy, pleading with Her Majesty not to strike him. Letitia suppresses her fury and says coldly that she won't strike. She doesn't understand why she's constantly suspected when the late emperor's death brings her no benefit. After thinking for a moment, she tells Kane to leave first, wanting to question Tristan alone. Kane immediately objects, saying directly that these are just Tristan's one-sided claims and nothing is confirmed yet. Tristan shows disdain, saying he's the most dangerous one. After all, Kane's Night Shadow mercenary company does anything for money. Such an unprincipled organization with no bottom line dares to call them dangerous. Tristan speaks mockingly. A little mutt dares to bark at a loyal hound. Seeing this, Letitia just feels both of them are dangerous. She takes a firm stance and orders Kane to leave again. Kane protests, calling out Master. Seeing that Letitia still insists, he can only leave huffing indignantly. After sending Kane away, Letitia calls out toward the door for Simon to come in. Letitia signals that Tristan can speak. Tristan furrows his brows and asks if it's all right for Simon to be present. Letitia states frankly that Simon is the person she trusts most. Seeing this, Tristan shrugs helplessly. Since Her Majesty insists, He won't argue further. This statement makes Simon feel somewhat puzzled. He stares at Tristan warily. Tristan admits that he had suspected her as the culprit because the late emperor had ordered a secret investigation into her when she was crown princess. Letitia's eyes widen in shock. Her father actually investigated her? She urgently asks about the investigation's purpose. Why would her father issue such an order? Tristan shakes his head, indicating he doesn't know. Perhaps the emperor simply wanted to thoroughly understand her before she took the throne. Letitia feels a bitter ache in her heart. She can't believe her father would have an assassination organization investigate her for this reason. Tristan continues explaining that the late emperor had been assassinated shortly after, and all the evidence pointed toward her. This forced the Shadow Guard to list Letitia as a suspect. Letitia shifts the topic and asks why he entered her harem. If he wanted contact with her, there should have been other methods. Tristan explains that after the investigation found no evidence against her, entering the harem was the best choice for close contact. Letitia asks if the Ambrose Trading Company leader knows about this. Tristan admits he knows nothing. Although the Shadow Guard is managed by his family, it was other relatives who made him the leader. Though they swear loyalty to the emperor, they don't belong to the emperor. Rather, it's a close cooperative relationship. Letitia still struggles to process this. She states that her father, secretly investigating her, is shocking. She also clearly knows that the heir to a trading company spread across the nation would never fabricate such a lie. She suppresses her shock. She orders Tristan to retrieve the oath of loyalty. Tristan doesn't dare delay. After receiving the order, he immediately turns to handle it. Letitia can't help but murmur that everything is too incredible. Simon looks puzzled and asks what she means. Letitia explains with a smile that she's referring to the harem members. Just now, those two came in together, and just from their walking postures, you can tell their personalities are completely different. These subtle differences make her find it particularly interesting. As night falls, Letitia states that although Tristan spoke the truth, she still has reservations in her heart and cannot fully trust him. After all, Tristan himself cannot prove that the Shadow Guard didn't betray the late emperor. Tristan follows up by asking if she still suspects the Shadow Guard as the culprit. Letitia shakes her head gently. She doesn't just suspect the Shadow Guard. She suspects everyone equally. Even she, the most favored, was investigated and listed as a suspect. She can trust others even less. As she speaks, she takes out a letter and hands it to Tristan. Tristan accepts it with confusion, not understanding what this letter is. Letitia states bluntly that only the Shadow Guard and the person who wrote this letter claim she's the culprit. She stares intently at Tristan, wanting to know his thoughts on this matter. After reading it, Tristan states with certainty that this wasn't the Shadow Guard's doing. Someone is deliberately framing them. Assassinating the late emperor, damaging the tomb, and accusing her as the culprit are all part of the frame-up. Letitia asks if he has any leads. Tristan sighs helplessly that working for the late emperor had already made him many enemies. Letitia nods in understanding. She's been busy with all sorts of official duties all day, only to be framed in the end. Seeing Tristan staring at her without speaking, Letitia asks with confusion if he has something to say. Tristan states frankly that Letitia seems to treat him as a subordinate. After all, he's still her man. But after learning he's the Shadow Guard leader, she naturally treated him as a subordinate. Letitia sighs helplessly. At a time like this, he still has the mood to say such things. Tristan says with a smile that if he doesn't do this, what if her heart wanders to someone else after getting the intelligence? He emphasizes that no matter what, he's her man, not simply the Shadow Guard leader. Letitia asks how he hopes to be treated. Tristan says hopefully that he wishes to be treated as a man. Letitia freezes at these words, then raises her hand and gently pats his head. Tristan instantly freezes. Is he being treated as a pet? Letitia raises an eyebrow and asks back, wasn't it you who asked me to treat you as a man? After the meeting ends, Letitia takes Simon out for a walk. Letitia can't help but feel curious. It seems like every time she has to speak first before he'll talk. Simon explains softly that he fears talking too much would annoy her. Letitia shakes her head, saying it won't. Simon's eyes light up, and he then asks if he can keep talking. Letitia deliberately refuses. Simon sighs helplessly that Her Majesty can sway people's hearts so easily. Letitia asks curiously, so you're that easily moved? Simon nods honestly that he's indeed easily swayed. Letitia grows more curious. How could someone so easily swayed remain unmarried until now? Simon doesn't respond for a long time. Letitia can't help but call his name, feeling somewhat uneasy. She wonders to herself if she said something wrong that upset him. But unexpectedly, Simon speaks up, saying he can't forget his first love. Letitia is utterly shocked. In her impression, he was always around work and family, or by her side and her brothers. She had thought he had no romantic history. She can't help but ask who his first love is. Simon simply says plainly that she got married. The aristocratic circles never really care about such things. but Simon doesn't seem like the type who would do that. Letitia feels somewhat awkward and softly comforts him that he'll meet someone better. But Simon sighs. He says somewhat wistfully that there won't be anyone better. Days pass one by one, and the investigation into the late Emperor's assassination makes no progress. The Shadow Guard, the destroyed tomb, the anonymous letter, all the leads seem to have gone cold. Letitia handles state affairs while investigating, working until late at night before collapsing into sleep. The only comfort is that the harem is gradually settling down, and the palace atmosphere has become much more peaceful. This day, the chief advisor suddenly reports that the person sent from Cyrano has arrived. The arrival is Adrian, deputy commander of the Imperial Guard, here to protect Kyle. Letitia scoffs, clearly disbelieving. To send an Imperial Guard to such a distant place without knowing how long he'll stay is absurd. She asks where he is. The chief advisor says he's already headed to the harem, and asks if she wants to go see. Letitia wonders aloud if Kyle really wasn't given the task of gathering intelligence. The chief advisor nods reluctantly. Although he doesn't like Kyle, he can't jump to conclusions about such matters. Seeing the chief advisor's difficulty, Letitia quickly explains she wasn't asking seriously. But since there's a new guest visiting, she definitely needs to go see. As soon as she steps into the harem, she hears a commotion. Simon speaks sternly, asking the maids and servants before him why they're so noisy. Everyone is startled, and the chatter stops abruptly. They quickly make way and bow respectfully to Letitia. The scene before her leaves her stunned. Kyle is pinning Tyler to the ground, beating him. Letitia quickly shouts for Kyle to stop. Kyle looks deeply aggrieved. He loudly says that Tyler insulted him first. Gavin immediately kneels and apologizes to Letitia, pleading for mercy. He explains that Tyler was too angry, which is why he said things to Kyle he shouldn't have. Kyle grits his teeth in defiance, unable to stand Gavin's manner. Letitia furrows her brows and demands to know what conflict occurred. Adrian explains that someone splashed water on Gavin from the second floor. Tyler was convinced it was Kyle and came to confront him. After speaking, he bows and introduces himself as Adrian, responsible for protecting Kyle. Letitia nods to acknowledge this, then asks what Tyler said. Kyle trembles with anger. Tyler called him bad-tempered and said Her Majesty would abandon him, mocked his origins, and said he's empty-headed. Gavin hastily defends, saying Tyler couldn't have said that. Kyle insists furiously that he really did say it. Letitia feels a headache coming on and quickly stops them, asking Gavin why Tyler went to confront Kyle. Tyler interrupts Gavin, explaining it's because Kyle once said he would splash water on Gavin. The previous conflict with Kyle was an accident, but Kyle refused to believe it, so Tyler assumed it was Kyle's doing. Kyle urgently defends himself, saying he was in his room the whole time. Tyler deliberately looks at Adrian, stating that anyone could be ordered to splash water. Kyle argues that things aren't as Tyler says. Although he did think about it, he never acted on it. Letitia questions if he thought about doing it. Kyle honestly admits he did. He complains that Gavin and Tyler really did splash water on him before. Letitia sighs helplessly. She thought the harem didn't need intervention. Is it because of their personalities? Private disputes are one thing, but now they're openly fighting. She states seriously that both sides insist on their own version, and both seem reasonable. But aside from baseless speculation, no one can provide actual evidence. Letitia immediately provides a solution. If they can't produce evidence, either drop it or both will be punished. Tyler is unwilling to let it go like this. Simon observes this. He just stands up when Simon's sword forces him back down. Gavin immediately and tactfully says he won't pursue it further. These words sound harsh to Kyle's ears. Kyle feels utterly stifled but can only suppress his anger and sulk. Simon observes this and worries they'll argue again. He suggests assigning additional nights to both of them. Letitia thinks this is feasible. She looks at Kyle's angry expression and wants to approach him with some comforting words. But just then, an urgent announcement suddenly interrupts everything. The assassin who killed the late emperor has been arrested. Letitia's pupils contract sharply. The investigation has been stalled for so long without leads. How could there suddenly be a result? Unable to suppress her shock and urgency, she quickly rises to go see. Watching her hurried figure, Kyle's eyes are filled with complex emotions. The moment Letitia's departing figure disappears, Adrian asks with concern if Kyle is all right. Kyle doesn't hide his terrible state, stating frankly that he's not fine at all. Adrian brings up that His Majesty is also worried he's not doing well. Kyle doesn't understand how he would know, having just arrived. He emphasizes that having just arrived makes it even clearer. If he were favored, Her Majesty would have spoken up for him. Kyle stubbornly insists that Letitia clearly loves him. Facing Adrian's doubt, he emphasizes that they don't understand. Adrian wants to say more but is interrupted by Kyle. He watches as Kyle silently walks back to his bed. Adrian can't help but reflect that Prince Kyle, who was always so confident, has indeed become much more mature. mature. If His Majesty of Cyrano saw this, he would surely be proud. Kyle snorts disdainfully, telling him to consider it nonsense. As soon as he finishes speaking, he changes the subject and demands to know the reason for Adrian's sudden visit. Adrian says he's already stated it. Kyle asks skeptically, "You're here to protect me?" He scoffs and mocks that Adrian is even weaker than himself. Kyle doesn't want to argue further and urges Adrian to reveal his true purpose. Adrian still maintains his original statement, repeatedly emphasizing he's here to protect him. Kyle asks with a cold laugh, "Aren't you here to monitor me?" Adrian still repeats that statement expressionlessly. Kyle sighs helplessly, knowing he won't reveal whatever orders he received. After all, he's not the emperor, but he knows perfectly well that no matter how much his brother cares, he wouldn't send a stealth expert just to be a simple guard. On the other side, Laetitia hurries toward the prison. Upon seeing the guards, she urgently asks how the culprit was caught when there were no leads before. The guards look troubled and hesitate. Laetitia turns her head, her sharp gaze scrutinizing the two. The two instantly panic and finally blurt out that the culprit turned himself in voluntarily. This answer shocks Laetitia. She quickly heads to the underground second floor where he's being held. She simply can't believe that her father's killer would voluntarily turn himself in. The moment she sees the culprit, her suspicion intensifies. Upon seeing her, the man trembles all over in fear, dripping with cold sweat. Laetitia questions sternly if he turned himself in, saying he killed the late emperor. The man stammers and admits it was indeed him. Laetitia frowns as she observes him. She has a chair brought and sits before him. He keeps repeating that everything he says is true. Laetitia studies him. Though this man has muscles, he shows no sign of being agile. Neither his appearance nor temperament resembles the assassin she imagined. Could he completely change when holding a knife? Or perhaps he's being threatened by the real culprit. She grows more curious about what could make him dare to shoulder the grave crime of regicide. Laetitia asks calmly how he killed the late emperor. The culprit freezes, seemingly not expecting her to ask this. Laetitia patiently repeats, asking how he killed the late emperor. The culprit hesitates until someone behind him makes a threat. Only then does he hurriedly answer that he assassinated the late emperor with a dagger. Laetitia immediately asks where he stabbed. The man answers without hesitation that it was the heart. She continues asking if death was instant. The culprit nods. The culprit mutters inwardly, unable to believe Laetitia can discuss her father's death so calmly. Hearing this, Laetitia reflects. The royal family never publicly revealed the late emperor's true cause of death, yet he knows the details. He must be connected. Laetitia continues questioning how he infiltrated without leaving traces. The culprit says he climbed the high walls and avoided everyone's sight. She laughs coldly. The palace is full of watchers. It can't be that easy. Unexpectedly, the culprit accurately states there are 52 guards at the main gate, working in 3 shifts. She deliberately sets a trap, asking how many people were in the bedroom when he infiltrated. The culprit says there was no one in the room at the time and corrects her that it wasn't the bedroom but the office. Laetitia understands. This guy is quite vigilant. He didn't fall for the trap. Seeing the test fail, Laetitia shifts the topic and asks if he knows the consequences of regicide. He will suffer torments worse than death. Even after dying, he won't find peace. His family will be enslaved, living in poverty for life. Even if he's a helpless orphan, she can find his unknown distant relatives. Even his friends and lovers will suffer severe punishment through guilt by association. As she finishes, the culprit's face fills with undeniable fear. He repeatedly says no. Laetitia watches his terrified expression and asks why he turned himself in. The culprit lowers his head guiltily, avoiding Laetitia's gaze. After the interrogation, Laetitia instructs Simon to have someone loosen the culprit's bindings slightly. This will entice him to try escaping on his own. Simon looks utterly confused. Unable to believe Laetitia wants to let the culprit escape, Laetitia calmly explains he's not the real culprit, but knowing such details means he must know the real one. Now the fish should be taking the bait soon. The next day, Simon hurries to report. The detained suspect actually succeeded in escaping. Understanding flashes in Laetitia's eyes. Just as she expected, she knows well he's not seeking death. Turning himself in was just a temporary measure. He's not the real culprit. Laetitia asks how long he's been gone. Simon answers that he doesn't seem to have gone far. Hearing this, she immediately orders the servants not to rush to catch him. Follow from a distance and wait until he's about to leave the capital before acting. Inform her once he's brought back to prison. Simon acknowledges the order and withdraws. The chief advisor observes all this, full of admiration. What the late emperor said was truly right. Laetitia immediately asks with curiosity what her father said. The chief advisor explains that the late emperor once said Laetitia would use any means necessary to achieve her goals. Now he sees it's indeed true. Hearing this assessment, Laetitia asks doubtfully if this really counts as praise. The chief advisor quickly responds that the late emperor's tone was full of satisfaction, so of course it's praise. Late at night, Laetitia wakes groggily. A strange fragrance lingers at her nose. She wonders what perfume this is. The scent is sweet and soft, making one want to smell it again and again. Suddenly, she jolts fully awake. She didn't summon anyone from the harem today. Instinctively, she draws the long sword from under her pillow. She commands sharply for whoever is hiding to show themselves. But looking around, the room is completely empty with no trace of anyone. She sees the window is open. She remembers opening it before sleeping. But at this height, no one could possibly climb up. Letitia is filled with confusion. What's going on? Was it just a dream? But the feeling of someone intruding was terrifyingly real. Yet the empty room makes her doubt herself. Was it really just a dream? Just then, urgent knocking comes from outside the door. Simon reports that the escaped suspect has been recaptured. Letitia looks at the guards before her with confusion. Is the real culprit about to surface? Is that why they look pleased? Simon notices her repeatedly touching her ear and asks with concern if her ear is bothering her. Letitia hastily denies it, but her mind still dwells on that strange hallucination. Was it sleep paralysis? No matter how skilled someone is, they can't vanish in seconds. From now on, she must close the window when sleeping. Seeing Letitia's sudden appearance, the suspect looks utterly disbelieving. Letitia gives a cold smile, welcoming him back. He feels the overwhelming pressure and can't help but ask if it was her. Letitia admits frankly that she deliberately let him go. She didn't expect him to escape so quickly. The man instantly panics and struggles continuously. She states bluntly that he's not the real culprit. Why insist on taking the blame for someone else? Letitia lists the suspicious points one by one. First, he turned himself in but was desperate to escape. Second, his escape skills were far too clumsy. His martial abilities are too poor to be the Emperor's assassin. There are also various flaws in his character. She doesn't bother explaining. Further, the man struggles and tries to argue. Letitia cuts him off directly, telling him to first answer why he's taking the blame. Seeing his silence, her tone turns cold. She warns him that she dislikes bloodshed. She advises him to honestly confess who's behind this. If he's being threatened, she can help him. Watching Letitia's smile, the chief advisor and Simon only feel terror. The suspect is intimidated by her presence and finally decides to speak. He just says Thales, the words barely leaving his lips. Right before everyone's eyes, the suspect suddenly can't speak. Blood gushes from his throat, splattering everywhere around them. Simon startles, but he reacts quickly, immediately grabbing his cloak to shield Letitia. The suspect's mouth keeps murmuring "Master." To the master. Then he gradually loses breath and slumps in the chair. The guards present are scared out of their wits, crying out that it's a curse. Letitia forcefully suppresses her inner turmoil and immediately orders someone to summon a priest. Don't touch the body. After speaking, she returns to her chambers. The maids see her covered in blood and cry out, hurrying to prepare bathwater. Simon sees the matter has concluded and rises to take his leave. Unexpectedly, Letitia speaks up to stop him. She tells him to wash up here before leaving. Letitia persuades him. Where is he going covered in blood like this? If he steps out of the palace like this, the guards will arrest him on the spot. Simon is momentarily speechless, not knowing how to respond. Looking at the blood all over himself, he still gentlemanly insists Her Majesty wash first. Letitia refuses, grateful that thanks to Simon blocking in front, she wasn't splattered with much blood. She insists again that Simon wash first, without worrying about her. Simon looks at the blood continuously dripping from his body. He no longer declines and walks straight toward the bath. Everything that happened in the prison today suddenly flashes through Letitia's mind. The culprit's vague to the master actually involves Thales, who died long ago. Letitia is filled with doubt. Why would Thales suddenly be mentioned? Is Thales the real culprit? Is he not dead? She immediately rejects this. Thales was beheaded. Could it be his supporters who assassinated her father? If they planned all this because they're dissatisfied with her ascension, then the trouble is enormous. The more Letitia thinks about it, the angrier she gets. This half-brother is just as annoying even after death. The door opens. She calls out asking if Simon finished washing. Seeing Simon, Letitia is shocked and embarrassed, quickly demanding why he came out without clothes. Simon looks embarrassed and says quietly that he has no clothes to change into. Letitia freezes. Only now does she realize that in her rush to have Simon wash off the blood, she forgot to prepare clothes. She quickly instructs the maid to take Simon's blood-stained clothes to wash. Simon feels somewhat embarrassed and quietly mentions that the clothes are a bit wet. The maid responds gently that it's fine, she'll take proper care of them. Watching Simon's shy appearance, Letitia can't help but laugh wildly. Simon is both angry and embarrassed, demanding if he's that funny. Letitia teases that seeing him like this in her room is truly hilarious. Simon complains that she's the first person to laugh at him stark naked. Letitia whistles teasingly. Seems he's often wandering around completely bare. He hastily defends himself that knights bathe together, and they often remove their shirts during training. Letitia deliberately teases him, saying he's the first person to be naked in her room. Hearing this, as if thinking of something, Simon becomes somewhat gloomy. He mutters quietly about clothes. Letitia pretends not to hear and asks what he said. Simon coughs twice and asks again to send someone for clothes. Letitia still teases him, deliberately saying she can't hear clearly. Simon has no choice but to humble himself, begging Her Majesty to just send someone to get him some clothes. Letitia drawls that she can't hear clearly. Simon really has no recourse and becomes dejected. Letitia apologizes with a laugh, saying Simon like this is just too amusing, but her hand obediently rings the bell to summon the maid. The maid responds promptly and respectfully asks for instructions. Laetitia tells the maid to find suitable clothes for Simon, teasing that Simon is too shy to come out. The maid understands and withdraws. The next morning, in the underground prison, Priestess Claire approaches with a grave expression to examine the body. She declares that the body is cursed. Immediately, commotion erupts around them. Everyone suspects shadow mages have returned. Laetitia reflects, lowering her head. Forbidden magic was banned long ago, and shadow mages were eradicated 500 years ago. Except for a few meritorious ones, all other shadow mages were executed as heretics. The survivors withdrew from the world. No one expected these vanished ones would reappear in such a terrifying way. Laetitia clicks her tongue with a headache. It's getting more and more complicated. She asks about the body disposal method and special procedures. The priestess responds seriously that burning is most effective. Some vicious curses contaminate burial sites. Laetitia asks what consequences contamination would bring. The priestess's tone is grave. People will weaken and contract strange diseases. At worst, it will turn the dead into the undead. Laetitia is shocked that what's recorded in history books could come true. She asks if the priestess has any way to deal with it. The priestess suggests burning it quickly. Laetitia hesitates. Simon notices her concerns. Laetitia admits the body is connected to the real culprit. She wanted to have someone paint a portrait and post notices to find leads. She asks if not burning it immediately would create evil energy and if it can be stopped from spreading. The priestess apologizes, saying no one knows exorcism methods. Laetitia sighs helplessly and decides to use her authority to force through her plan. She orders them to find all the top portrait artists and gather all the ice to prevent the body from decomposing. Bring everyone who practices shadow magic or curses privately. She instructs not to do so under the pretense of arrest. At this moment, a priest steps forward. He hesitantly suggests that Elder Selena might understand curses and shadow magic, but the elder is at the sacred grove. He asks if he should go consult her. Laetitia calculates the journey would take 5 days. She then earnestly thanks the priest. The priest respectfully agrees and turns to arrange personnel. The chief advisor coughs lightly, admitting the timing is inappropriate, but he has investigation results to report. Laetitia doesn't react at first. The chief advisor explains it's about Lord Kane's past. Laetitia asks what the investigation results are. The chief advisor states he seems to have no high-profile romantic history, not even romantic rumors. He shifts the topic, adding that this might simply mean he keeps a low profile. Moreover, Kane's mercenary company has traveled everywhere, and the rumors are absurd and hard to verify. The more Laetitia thinks, the more puzzled she becomes. Where did those seductive behaviors come from then? Could such talent for flirtation be innate? The chief advisor seizes the opportunity to advise that since she went through such trouble to gather a harem, she should care for them more. He states frankly that if she summoned them but doesn't show concern, the ministers will certainly make an issue of the imperial consorts, pestering her endlessly. Tyler is furious, stating with certainty that Kael will definitely bother them again. Gavin quickly tries to calm Tyler down. It's already been 2 days. Tyler burns with anger. How could he let it go after just 2 days? He insists it was Kael. Gavin rationally advises not to jump to conclusions. Tyler retorts that only Kael had argued with him before. He also complains that Kael's bad personality is well known. Gavin sighs inwardly helplessly. Tyler looks at Gavin, not understanding how he was so shrewd as a child but is now so weak. At home, everyone protects him, so he doesn't need to worry. But in this harem, enemies surround them on all sides. Tyler directs his anger at Laetitia, dissatisfied that she remained neutral then. He complains that even though Laetitia knew Gavin is kind, she didn't speak up for him. This makes Tyler feel very uncomfortable. Tyler expected Gavin would correct him, but instead sees him full of disappointment and silent. It seems he too is very disappointed about this. Tyler immediately pulls himself together. Gavin is the dignified, handsome type, but the others all follow the glamorous route. He needs to change his styling strategy to highlight Gavin's natural innocence. Gavin asks with confusion why Tyler wants him to wear a brooch to the library. Tyler explains with a smile that he wants him to dress better. Gavin is confused, not understanding what this is about. Tyler mentions their chance encounter with Laetitia at the library last time, suggesting he spend time there. Gavin doesn't understand why going to the library requires such trouble, but Tyler interrupts with an exclamation. Tyler tells Gavin he needs to go buy cosmetics and to wait for him. Turning his head, he actually sees Laetitia entering Kane's room. Gavin freezes in place. The atmosphere instantly becomes somewhat sad. Roland and Kane are playing chess when someone announces Her Majesty's arrival. Laetitia pushes the door open and sees Kane and Roland standing together. Both bow to her. She can't help but reflect that these two standing together are truly pleasing to the eye. She just doesn't understand how two people with such different backgrounds and personalities ended up together. Are they arguing? But it doesn't really seem like that. Seeing her silent, Kane asks curiously what's wrong. Laetitia says with a smile that she just didn't expect to see Roland, but inwardly can't believe these two are playing chess. Roland looks displeased, demanding if he's in the way. Letitia quickly explains, remembering how tense the atmosphere was at their last meeting. Kane asks again what she needs from him. Letitia says she came to see how he's doing, not understanding why he's unhappy too. Roland looks resentful, accusing her of apparently not being curious about how he's doing. Letitia quickly denies this. Letitia finally understands why her father only saw one harem member at a time. She explains she's caring for them one by one. Roland still speaks sarcastically, asking if Kane is the first. Kane secretly feels pleased. Then he asks Letitia why she's not speaking. Letitia sighs helplessly and makes an excuse about having official business to handle. Kane is dissatisfied, questioning why she's leaving when she just arrived. Roland glares at Kane with displeasure. Kane's eyes show disappointment. He has no time to deal with him. Letitia is deeply embarrassed. Taking advantage of their distraction, she secretly slips away, just wanting to quickly escape this awkward atmosphere. Simon asks with a worried expression what's wrong. Letitia finds it strange. This is the third time someone has asked about her condition. Simon looks bewildered, not understanding what she means. Letitia doesn't bother explaining, just saying she needs to return quickly. Simon grows more curious about why she finished so quickly. Letitia brushes him off, saying she still has work to do. She catches sight of Simon's sly smile and is immediately displeased. Simon quickly denies it. Letitia won't let it go, insisting she clearly saw him smiling. Simon respectfully reports that he's already had someone paint the portrait. The investigators have departed, working full force to track down shadow mages. Priestess Claire has also gone to the sacred grove. Letitia nods gently. The assassination of the late emperor was already a major case, and now shadow magic is involved. She notices the chief advisor hesitating and asks what's wrong. The chief advisor hesitates a moment, asking why she returned so quickly. Didn't she go see Lord Kane? She stayed less than 30 minutes. Letitia realizes belatedly that she indeed left after barely speaking. But this matter doesn't seem like something she can honestly tell the chief advisor. The chief advisor mistakenly thinks the harem failed to satisfy her and suggests gathering 3 more. As soon as he finishes speaking, Simon's sword suddenly drops. The two turn to look at Simon, but his expression doesn't change. He quickly apologizes. He explains that the sword wasn't fastened properly, causing it to slip. But Letitia and the chief advisor clearly have disbelieving expressions. Simon abruptly brings up Prince Thalos, asking if Letitia doesn't plan to investigate this matter. Letitia nods thoughtfully. It's better to investigate more thoroughly. The chief advisor asks if the culprit is really Prince Thalos' supporter. Simon believes the other party simply wants to insult her. Letitia says both make sense. They can't investigate in only one direction. Seeing this, Simon immediately volunteers, but Letitia directly refuses. Simon is unwilling to give up, emphasizing this matter must be thoroughly investigated and he's more suitable. Secrecy is crucial for this type of matter, and he wants to investigate personally. Letitia states frankly that he's already busy enough, even lacking sleep time. She lists Simon's multiple responsibilities, managing the Imperial Guard and serving as her personal bodyguard. He's also secretly investigating the letter thief case. Letitia admits it's not that she doesn't trust his abilities, she simply fears he'll overwork himself. She plans to assign the investigation of Thalos to Tristan. Simon looks surprised, asking if Letitia really trusts Tristan. Just then, a servant announces that Lord Tristan has arrived. Letitia's gaze is firm. She'll know the answer now. She instructs the servant to let him in. Letitia casually asks if he'd like coffee. Tristan instantly understands Her Majesty isn't summoning him to her bedchamber. He asks mockingly if this is testing his patience or another form of torture. Letitia doesn't understand. Tristan deliberately asks, what would happen if he wore only a thin shirt? Letitia says delightedly, that would be quite nice. Tristan's vision darkens, dissatisfied with this answer. Letitia hands him a document, telling him to look. Tristan opens it with confusion. It's almost empty inside. Letitia directly instructs Tristan to complete this document. Tristan instantly realizes she's looking for the Shadow Guard leader. Letitia calmly counters that regardless of which identity, he's her man. She mentions the matter of the late Emperor's killer turning himself in and dying, asking if he knows about it. He says he's already heard. Letitia asks if the other harem members know. Tristan says some harem members are well informed. Letitia shifts the topic, mentioning that the culprit mentioned Prince Thalos before dying. Tristan looks shocked and urgently asks if it's true. Letitia assigns this matter to him to investigate whether it's true. Seeing Tristan suddenly fall silent, Letitia asks with confusion if he's unwilling. Just then, Tristan suddenly speaks up, asking if she knows how to train a dog. Letitia looks completely bewildered by the question. Tristan slowly explains that training a dog requires both stern teaching and rewards. When the dog performs well, you also need to praise and encourage it. He asks directly what reward there is if he completes the task well. Letitia freezes for a moment. She hadn't thought about this. Seeing this, Tristan doesn't beat around the bush. He states frankly that he hopes she'll summon him to share her bed as a reward. No one knows that his heart is filled with curiosity about Letitia. He once thought he could understand her through rumors and intelligence. Now he just wants to set aside statistics and intelligence and explore the real Letitia Valentina. Leaving the chambers, he unexpectedly encounters Gavin. The other is holding a small bird in his hands. Tristan proactively asks if he needs help but is directly ignored. He silently observes this second son of the Prime Minister, famous for being gentle and timid. Everyone believes he's kind, but in reality, that's not the case.